Bleach. Studying medicine can't save the spirit world. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 376 Was it intentional or accidental? In addition, if you were a student who is particularly interested in the art of flower arrangement and have any doubts or confusions about flower arrangement, you can also ask questions freely. After saying this, Senju Cheng indicated that everyone could start on their own, and then he picked up the book in his hand and sat on the chair to browse by himself. To be honest, flower arrangement is undoubtedly a relatively idealistic art. Therefore, Senju Cheng's teaching task has never been to let all students really learn flower arrangement, but to discover students who are relatively talented in flower arrangement for the school, and then occasionally provide professional guidance. For the school, if a well-known flower arrangement artist is cultivated in the high school stage, then Karakura First High School will undoubtedly make a lot of money, which will be of great benefit to its reputation. As expected by Senju Cheng, many boys do not understand the beauty of flower arrangement at all, and have no intention of completing the tasks assigned by Senju Cheng. They either lie down and sleep, or do other things of their own. Senju Cheng also turned a blind eye to these actions that would not affect other students. However, it seems that there is some kind of unspoken rule. Even if a bad boy is not interested in flower arrangement, he dare not do anything that seriously affects the classroom discipline. As for quite a number of girls, some of them were seriously appreciating the flower arrangement works and thinking about them, while others were simply staring at Makoto Senju, who was sitting on the podium reading a book. Among them, some of the bolder girls even stood up and went to the podium to ask Makoto Senju about their doubts and questions about flower arrangement, and there were also some strange invitations. Teacher Kurosaki, do you think I have the talent to study flower arrangement in depth? Teacher Kurosaki, I seem to have understood a little bit. Can you give me some individual guidance after school? Teacher Kurosaki, my family has completed a flower arrangement that seems to be able to do a backflip. Do you have time to come to my house to take a look? Makoto Senju. When he heard the last strange invitation, even Makoto Senju couldn't help but be a little confused. Flower arrangement that can do a backflip, are you sure? Does such a flower arrangement really exist? Makoto Senju, who is also a flower arrangement artist, almost instinctively felt a little curious, and then realized that this was undoubtedly nonsense. Even if the forest enduring maintained by the ability of Morning Forest dared not do a trick like backflips. If it can do backflips, can it still be called a flower arrangement? Awesome, Senju Makoto sighed, and then said, Mr. Homeju, but I won't come to your house. You can bring the work to me in the flower shop. Homeju Kizaru, who has a head of red hair that seems to be passionate and perverted, pushed up her glasses and said while biting her lower lip. Teacher Kurosaki, there is no one else in my family, so don't worry about causing any unnecessary trouble. I promise that I will only do. Before Homeju Kizaru finished speaking, Arisawa Ryuki, who was standing behind her, strangled Homeju Kizaru's neck with a death triangle lock, and then said to Senju Makoto with a bit of apology. Sorry, Mr. Kurosaki, Kizaru is just in heat regularly. I'm sorry to bother you. Senju Makoto smiled gently, indicating that he didn't care, and pointed his finger at Hometeku Kizaru, whose head was beginning to swell with blood. Arisawa, if you don't let go, Hometeku Kizaru might be in trouble. Arisawa Ryuki was stunned and quickly let go of Hometeku Kizaru, but Hometeku Kizaru slid down to the ground softly. Hey, Kizaru, are you okay? Hometeku Kizaru spoke weakly. I can't seem to breathe, but I may need Mr. Kurosaki, or time to give artificial respiration. In an instant, Arisawa Ryuki's forehead was almost visible with blue veins in the shape of a well, and then he stepped directly on Hometeku Kizaru and forcibly dragged Hometeku Kizaru off the podium. Senju Makoto watched this scene, and couldn't help but sigh in his heart that the youth and vitality of the girls were really amazing. It made Senju Makoto feel that his mentality seemed to be much younger. High school life in Karakura Town is so good. As for the scene that happened on the podium, Ichigo Kurosaki seemed to have gotten used to it. For Ichigo Kurosaki, he has almost completely accepted the fact that his uncle Kurosaki is so popular wherever he goes. The only thing that makes Ichigo Kurosaki uncomfortable is that he always feels like sitting on pins and needles when being taught by Senju Makoto. At this moment, a small ball of paper fell in front of Ichigo Kurosaki, and Ichigo Kurosaki opened it and took a look. Ichigo. Damn it. Why is Mr. Kurosaki so popular with so many girls, and the person is not me? It's so sad, so incredible. Kurosaki Ichigo glanced at it, then glanced at Asano, who was famous for being funny in the class, and without hesitation, he crumpled the paper ball and threw it away like garbage, saying something unconsciously in his heart. What a joke, it would be incredible if you could be more popular than Uncle Kurosaki. Then, Kurosaki Ichigo looked at the blue sky and white clouds outside the window in boredom, but the figure in strange black clothes he saw today inexplicably appeared in his mind. Who was that guy? It seems to be fighting with some monster. Just as Kurosaki Ichigo was lost in thought. Dong dong. Makoto Senju, who had finished the class without realizing it, tapped lightly on Kurosaki Ichigo's desk with his fingers. Ichigo, when I passed by Kurosaki Clinic today, why did it seem that Masaki and Ishin were not at home? Makoto Senju asked casually. Hearing this question, the corners of Kurosaki Ichigo's mouth twitched obviously, and he answered in a rather speechless tone. It's almost their wedding anniversary, so they left me, Yako, and Kusili behind and went traveling. Leaving at such a sensitive time? Were there other arrangements for their departure? Makoto Senju had an idea and asked Ichigo Kurosaki. Was it intentional or accidental? But Ichigo Kurosaki subconsciously misunderstood what Makoto Senju meant and answered with gritted teeth. Maybe, Yako, Kusili, and I were just an accidental accident to those two guys. Makoto Senju. For a moment, Makoto Senju gave up discussing the issue of whether it was an accident with Ichigo Kurosaki and asked tentatively instead. In that case, let's have dinner at the flower shop tonight. I'll ask Yinjuo to prepare dinner for you, Yako, and Kusili. Chapter 377. Just an ordinary college teacher. As soon as these words came out, Ichigo Kurosaki's eyebrows almost visibly raised, revealing a look of interest. But, Yin cooks? Ichigo Kurosaki's expression darkened, and he rejected Makoto Senju's proposal almost without hesitation. As a former victim, in order for Nikurea's cooking skills to improve significantly, there must be diners who taste the food. However, Nikurea may have been very good at mixing various chemical agents as an assistant to Meiri Kurosaki in the past, but as for cooking, it seems that as long as it is in Nikurea's hands, the finished product will always become extremely strange. Therefore, in order to allow Nikurea to listen to the accurate evaluation of the diners, in the early days of Nikurea's cooking, Makoto Senju pinched his nose many times, and asked Synopsis, who used the remdoll, to trick Ichigo Kurosaki to come as a guest. And this has become a certain shadow that cannot be shaken off in Ichigo Kurosaki's heart. I will absolutely. I will not try the food made by him. Ichigo Kurosaki said with gritted teeth as if he wanted to protect his own Kuchako. Well then, Senju Makoto didn't force it, but raised his hand to Inouraim on the other side and said. Oraim-san, don't forget to eat lunch in the club at noon. Yes. Inouraim replied with gratitude and shyness. Then, Senju Makoto took the book and the flower arrangement and left the classroom, and the classroom behind him became very noisy. The topic was still mainly about Senju Makoto, a celebrity, and other than that, they all criticized Ichigo Kurosaki and Oraim Inoue for being so close to Senju Makoto. Always so carefree, Senju Makoto smiled slightly as if he missed it, but he also knew that Ichigo Kurosaki's peaceful time was probably not much left. It was different from Ishida, who had understood the true face of some parts of the world under the guidance of his grandfather Ishida Sojin. Ishin Kurosaki and Masaki Kurosaki are not the kind of people who pursue power purely. Instead, they attach great importance to family and affection, and hope that their children can have a warm and peaceful childhood. Therefore, although Masaki Kurosaki has not completely lost the power of the queency, Ishin Kurosaki and Masaki Kurosaki have always disguised themselves as ordinary people in order to avoid their three children from being involved. As the elder brother, Ichigo Kurosaki was born with extremely high spiritual power, which allowed him to easily see the souls that had left the body early on. However, just like the teenagers always have some special fantasies about themselves, most of them are worried about involving their families. Ichigo Kurosaki not only did not doubt Ishin Kurosaki and Masaki Kurosaki, but also deliberately hid the fact that he could see souls from his family. Only, Ichigo Kurosaki still had some impression of the experience when he first met Masaki Senju 7 years ago, and he always had some doubts about Masaki Senju. However, due to Kurosaki Masaki's request, Senju Makoto has not shown any abilities different from ordinary humans in front of Kurosaki Ichigo in the past 7 years. Just an ordinary high school teacher, Senju Makatao commented on himself, and then returned to his desk to rest. Occasionally, he chatted with other teachers who had no classes. He found it interesting to listen to the teachers discussing the students' content. Then, Senju Makatao saw that the time was almost up, and leisurely walked up to the rooftop of the teaching building. When Senju Makatao pushed open the iron door of the rooftop, Mian, who was wearing a gorgeous and majestic purple kimono and using a shadow doll, was standing quietly in it. Under the breeze, the long purple hair moved a little more messy. Mian's fingers calmly brushed across the cheek that seemed to have no extra expression, and put the messy hair behind the ear. Then, Mian took 2 steps forward, handed the exquisite lunchbox in his other hand to Senju Makatao, and said, "According to the store manager's request, today's style is a general bento." Senju Makatao took the bento with a smile and said, "Thank you for your hard work, Yin. I will enjoy the bento. It's just the store manager's order." Mian said this without any emotion, and then jumped from the edge of the rooftop with a pair of slender legs in black silk stockings, and soon disappeared in front of Senju Makatao. Witnessing this scene, Senju Makatao couldn't help but smile a little. Although it was quite subtle, Senju Makatao undoubtedly saw a bit of joy in Mian's eyes, which showed that Mian's emotions were obviously richer than before. More importantly, compared to the simple mechanical execution of orders, Mian seemed to have gradually developed a lot of likes and dislikes belonging to his own will. Among them, as for the matter of cooking, Mian seemed to be doing everything according to Senju Makatao's orders on the surface, but in fact, Senju Makatao clearly felt that Mian also liked cooking very much in his heart. Then, Senju Makatao took the bento in his hand and went to the activity room of the flower arrangement club. During the non-club activity time of the university, the door of the activity room was closed and locked. However, as the only instructor of the flower arrangement club, Makatao Senju undoubtedly had the backup key and opened the door and walked in. In the activity room, completed or unfinished flower arrangements can be seen everywhere, as well as some fresh or withered flowers. There is a faint fragrance of different flowers in the air. This is also Makatao Senju's favorite dining place. He sat down by himself and waited for the arrival of Orai Minue. Orai Minue, Makatao Senju is actually quite interested in this classmate. If Makatao Senju remembers correctly, the power of Orai Minue, Shield Shun 6 Flowers, was evaluated by Aizen Sasuke as a rejection of all things and the ability to completely invade the realm of God. This made Makatao Senju think back and couldn't help but wonder if it was also a mastery of name in a certain sense. However, after the intentional or unintentional contact between Makatao Senju and Inoue Oraim during this period of time, at this stage, Inoue Oraim is undoubtedly just an ordinary person. Apart from the extraordinary holy text, there is nothing special about her. While Makatao Senju was thinking, the door of the activity room behind him was carefully pushed open, and Inoue Oraim poked her head in little by little. After confirming the back of Makatao Senju, her expression seemed to become more nervous, and she hurriedly walked into the club activity room, and then quickly closed the door. "Teacher Kurosaki, teacher, I'm here." Makatao Senju, who was a little absent-minded, turned around and said with a gentle and somewhat brilliant smile on his face, "Inoue-san, come over and have a lunchbox. The lunchbox prepared by my clerk for me today is quite rich, with ham, milk, fish roll and so on." Chapter 378. Forest Instrument. Yes, although this was not the first time that she had been with Makatao Senju in private, Orai Minue was still somewhat flattered when she heard this, and then she sat in front of Makatao Senju rather awkwardly and said, Thank you, Mr. Kurosaki." In fact, Makatao Senju was very clear about Orai Minue's past. Her parents were missing, and her only brother who had taken care of her since she was a child was in a car accident a few years ago. He died in the Kurosaki clinic because of his severe injuries and could not be transferred to a large hospital in time. Since then, Orai Minue, who had completely lost her support, had been living a life of having no food to eat, and she relied on the help of kind people to barely make ends meet, and therefore she had an unusual obsession with bento. If Makatao Senju had not compensated Orai Minue for her bento, with her financial ability, she might have been hungry all day. "You're welcome. Come on, have some chicken legs. You always come up with those weird things. You need to supplement some nutrition to grow up well." At the end, Senju Makatao noticed the exaggerated holy words of Inoue Oraim, and his voice could not help but pause. Especially when Senju Makatao recalled the Kachika Rukia he had just met last night, he could not help but sigh secretly. Some things are really born with it, and if you don't have it, no matter how hard you work, it's meaningless. Of course, except for fakes. With the family background of the Kachika family, it took decades of time, but there was no way to change the fate of Kachika Rukia. Ironically, the poor Inoue has a heart that is not comparable to that of about 100 Kachika Rukia added together. Enough, enough, Inoue said repeatedly in a panic and gratitude. Thank you, Mr. Kurosaki. I can't eat much. Then, Senju Makoto felt that Inoue was nervous, and he no longer urged Inoue to eat more. Instead, he took the initiative to eat his own portion and chatted with Inoue about some topics that both of them were familiar with. Unconsciously, Inoue relaxed completely, and even unconsciously entered a state of enthusiastic communication. Ha ha ha, I didn't expect that Inoue-san had such an experience. There's nothing we can do about it. Isn't it embarrassing? Mr. Kurosaki, it's indeed a bit embarrassing, but don't worry, Inoue-san, I will never tell these things to other students, even Ichigo Kurosaki-san is no exception. Her. Suddenly, Inoue's face seemed to be slightly flushed, and she said. What? Kurosaki-san is not special either. Really? If that's the case, I'll tell Ichigo. No, Kurosaki-sensei, please, can you please not tell Kurosaki-sensei? Well, it's not impossible. If you don't want Ichigo to know, then you have to agree to one request of mine, Senju Makoto said with a smile. What request? Inoue, who was vaguely touched by something in her heart, asked shyly. Senju Makoto said elegantly and casually. Come to think of it, you are almost an adult, right? In that case, why don't you work in my flower shop during your free time? As for the salary, I will settle it according to the highest standard. In an instant, Inoue's movements were completely paused. The gentle Kurosaki-sensei called it a request with a bit of threat, but Inoue understood that this was undoubtedly Kurosaki-sensei's help to her. There is no doubt that the request, which was somewhat threatening, was more of a gentle act by Kurosaki-sensei to protect his fragile dignity, fearing that he would misunderstand it as a humiliating charity. Tick-tick, Inoue, who was still eating fish roe in her mouth, was moved to tears immediately, and quickly swallowed all the fish roe and said. No, Kurosaki-sensei, I don't know anything. I'm afraid I will only make things worse. However, Senju Makoto did not give Inoue a chance to continue to refuse, and stood up and said. Inoue-sensei, this is not an invitation, but a request. You don't want those things to be known by Kurosaki-sensei Ichigo, right? In that case, then come to work in my flower shop. Then, Senju Makoto wiped the corner of his mouth with a tissue, and walked directly out of the activity room while saying. It's decided, Inoue-san. If you have a bento box, please bring it with you next time you work at the flower shop. After a pause, just as Senju Makoto opened the door and was about to leave, he turned around and smiled at Inoue, saying, also, you don't need to bring a bento box while working part-time. As the store manager, I have the responsibility to feed the employees no matter what, and I will never let you go hungry. After saying that, Senju Makoto waved to Inoue, whose eyes were red, and left Inoue alone in the activity room, crying. Thank, Mr. Kurosaki. Although Senju Makoto had already left the activity room, he still heard Inoue's mumbling gratitude clearly. Because, Senju Makoto secretly added some ingredients to the bento that Inoue ate this time. Some of them are similar to forest seeds, but they are considered part of Makoto Senju's body. Their function is to locate and monitor the physical condition of Inoue. They have been mixed in the fish roe and eaten by Inoue. This is not because Makoto Senju has any perverted thoughts about Inoue. On the contrary, in fact, Inoue may not know it, but in fact, most of the money that has been secretly supporting her daily life in recent years has been provided by Makoto Senju. Of course, Makoto Senju's support is not only for Inoue, but also for a considerable number of poor orphans who have no one to rely on in the entire Karakura town. Makoto Senju is not completely ignorant of the medical skills of the world. Even after Makoto Senju has mastered a large number of instruments, he can completely repair all kinds of incredible injuries through the instruments that are already considered part of Makoto Senju's body. However, Makoto Senju knows better that humans have a short lifespan and can continue to live in another way with their souls. What they lacked was perhaps not just medical assistance, but more poverty. The main reason why Senju Makoto left the Mori no Kaiko and pushed Inoue to work in the flower shop was to confirm Inoue's changes from a closer distance during this period. How could an ordinary person suddenly possess the power of a name? This undoubtedly made Senju Makoto quite curious. Chapter 379. Rukia and Ichigo's first encounter. On that day, the flower arranging club had a group activity and needed the assistance of the flower arranging teacher, Makoto Senju. So Makoto Senju left the school in a leisurely manner with some girls from the flower arranging club. It was almost dark. Teacher Kurosaki, see you tomorrow. Thank you for your guidance, Teacher Kurosaki. Goodbye. In the sweet and lovely farewells, Makoto Senju rejected some strange invitations and returned to the flower shop. To Makoto Senju's surprise, although today was not a day for training, Ishirai was standing in the flower shop respectfully waiting. Unlike the delicate-looking little dish in the past, under the training and guidance of Makoto Senju, Ishirai's temperament at this moment is more inclined to the elegance and indifference of Ishirai-jin. As for Ishirai's figure, it looks a little thin of an Ishirai-jin, like a gentle and refined high school student. After Makoto Senju appeared, Ishirai hurriedly bent down and bowed respectfully. Uncle Kurosaki. Makoto Senju asked as he let Synopsis take off his white windbreaker. Huh? Why are you here? Are you confused when you were practicing your ability to grow or shrink at any time? No, I have already mastered that ability. After a pause, Ishirai continued. I came here this time to tell Uncle Kurosaki that I plan to transfer to Karakura First High School. In this way, it will be more convenient to ask Uncle Kurosaki for advice. Does Longxian have any objection? If I remember correctly, you are studying in an aristocratic school now. The teaching resources of the public Karakura First High School are not as good as those of aristocratic schools. Makoto Senju asked. Ishirai narrowed his eyes, and his fists clenched unconsciously, making a series of crackling sounds, and then he said. That man has no right to comment on my decision. Makoto Senju. Witnessing this scene, Makoto Senju seemed to have thought of something, and unbuttoned the middle button of Ishirai's shirt with 2 fingers. What he saw was the bandage wrapped around Ishirai. Suddenly, Senju Makoto couldn't help but feel a headache and asked. Rai, you didn't fight with Raijin again, did you? Ishirai, who was wearing glasses and looked gentle and elegant, replied with a hint of excitement. Yes, Uncle Kurosaki, but I didn't embarrass you. This time, I broke the man's back teeth and nose bridge. At this moment, Senju Makoto really didn't know how to complain about this situation. Originally, Senju Makoto thought that after teaching Ishirai the practice of exterminating the master, Ishirai-jin and Ishirai might have more common topics and ease the tense relationship between father and son. But what Senju Makoto didn't expect was that this instead caused the Ishida family to have a tendency of domestic violence. Every 3.5 months, Ishirai and Ishirai-jin would have a father-son fight. If it weren't for Ishirai-jin's wife Katajuya who was still alive and tried to dissuade him many times, I'm afraid that one of them would have been beaten out of his mind. This also made Senju Makoto feel embarrassed, and he didn't know how to face Ishirai-jin. After all, almost everything Ishirai knew was taught by Senju Makoto, but in the end, Ishirai, who had the power, did not hesitate to fight his father. Does your mother have any objections? Senju Makoto asked. My mother now wishes I would keep a little distance from that man. Ishirai replied expressionlessly. Then make your own decision, don't ask me, I'm not your father. Senju Makoto said helplessly. About a year or 2 ago, after Ishida Sojin died of old age, Ishirai became closer and more respectful to Senju Makoto. Although Ishirai verbally called Senju Makoto uncle, his words and deeds undoubtedly regarded Senju Makoto as a teacher and a father. If it weren't for the fact that Ishirai and Ishirai-jin looked exactly the same, Senju Makoto would have really suspected that something had happened between him and Katajuya. So now as his biological father, Senju Makoto secretly instigated Ishirai to go back and crush Ishirai-jin. I know, I'm sorry for causing you trouble, Uncle Kurosaki. I will find a way to solve the problem of that man as soon as possible, and I will definitely not embarrass Uncle Kurosaki. Ishirai bowed again and said, and then left the flower shop respectfully. However, Senju Makoto listened to Ishirai's tone. Why didn't it seem like he was going to solve the conflict between father and son, but instead planned to let his mother remarry to Kurosaki flower shop as soon as possible? However, those were ultimately family affairs of the Ishida family, although Senju Makoto was also quite puzzled about the specific reasons, so that the relationship between Ishirai and Ishirai-jin was so bad. However, considering that if he got involved, it might make the situation worse, Senju Makoto chose to keep silent and not ask. Then, Makoto Senju had dinner with Synopsis and Nikwonmu in the flower shop as usual, and then informed them about the problem of Inuzeorime coming to work, and asked Synopsis to take care of Inuzeorime. Soon, Makoto Senju sensed that the spiritual pressure of Rukia Kachiki overlapped with that of Ichigo Kurosaki. Has it started to contract? Makoto Senju, who was leisurely creating flower arrangements in the flower shop, thought secretly, hesitated for a moment, and gave up the idea of ruining the meeting between Ichigo Kurosaki and Rukia Kachiki. Just like Orihime in a way, Makoto Senju also had something to verify on Ichigo Kurosaki. The spiritual pressure changes in the Kurosaki clinic not far from the flower shop were not only clear to Makoto Senju, but also to Synopsis. As for Nikwonmu, because Makoto Senju secretly tampered with the shadow doll, he could not sense the changes in spiritual pressure. As the spiritual pressure at the Kurosaki clinic unexpectedly changed, Synopsis asked in a low voice, "Master, does the Kurosaki family need to be dealt with?" Senju Makoto did not answer, but instead looked around the flower shop and asked, "Where is Yorishi?" At noon today, Urahara Kisyu came to the flower shop and seemed to say something to Yorishi, and then took Yorishi away. Synopsis replied. Hearing this, Senju Makoto's eyes flashed slightly, and he already had answers to some things in his heart. Kurosaki Ishin and Urahara Kisyu are undoubtedly wearing the same pants. Kurosaki Masaki may not know that this time to leave is probably pushed by Kurosaki Ishin. In other words, the encounter between Kachiki Rukia and Kurosaki Ichigo is probably promoted by Urahara Kisyu Kandaze and Sosa for their own purposes. Chapter 380 Get Out of the Way or Die. Kurosaki Clinic. As if it was a fateful encounter, Rukia Kachiki followed the spiritual pressure of the hollow and broke into Ichigo Kurosaki's bedroom. Just when Rukia Kachiki was still somewhat puzzled by the huge spiritual pressure that Ichigo Kurosaki was born with, and briefly explained the relationship between the god of death, humans and hollows. The attacking hollow interrupted the communication between Rukia Kachiki and Ichigo Kurosaki, and attacked Kurosaki Yuko and Kurosaki Kari. This behavior undoubtedly completely angered Ichigo Kurosaki, and under the belief of protecting his sister at all costs, he rushed towards the hollow with his human body. However, although Ichigo Kurosaki unconsciously dissipated a huge amount of spiritual power at any time even as a human, he was undoubtedly unable to exert that huge spiritual power with his body. Witnessing that Ichigo Kurosaki was about to be swallowed by the hollow, Rukia Kachiki, who was a little slow, subconsciously stepped forward to protect Ichigo Kurosaki as a human. Maybe it was because she was too anxious to exert her strength, or maybe the bite force of the hollow was too strong, or maybe it was some other unknown reason. She pulled out her zanpakutō and blocked the hollow's open mouth in time. As a quasi-chief officer trained by the Kachiki family and the 13th Division, she was unable to block it. As a result, when the hollow bit down, Kachiki Rukia's zanpakutō got stuck in the hollow's teeth, but the hollow bit Kachiki Rukia's shoulder fiercely. Puff. Blood splashed. In the severe pain, Kachiki Rukia almost instantly felt that half of her body was rapidly losing consciousness. In the stimulation of the severe pain, Kachiki Rukia pulled out her sword and pulled it hard in the hollow's mouth, so that the hollow instinctively loosened its mouth and retreated in pain, but Kachiki Rukia also staggered a few steps and fell directly. Oh no, the injury is more serious than I thought. Rukia Kachiki's expression froze, and she instinctively became a little flustered. Although Rukia Kachiki has been a god of death for quite some time, she has never been on a mission alone in the world in the past under the secret protection of Byakuya Kachiki. Faced with the current crisis, Rukia Kachiki is undoubtedly a little panicked. At the same time, the door of the Kurosaki flower shop opened, and Makoto Senju, who was wearing a casual shirt, put one hand in his pocket and closed the door behind him with the other hand, as if he was going out for a walk. However, before Makoto Senju could take a few steps in the direction of the Kurosaki clinic, a ghost barrier suddenly appeared in the air in front of him, blocking Makoto Senju's way. Makoto Senju's eyes froze slightly, as if solemn, and then he turned his eyes, looked in a certain direction, and spoke. Urahara Kisuke. The next moment, a burst of colorful ripples appeared in the transparent air, and Urahara Kisuke's seemingly unremarkable figure appeared in front of Senju Makoto, with the small fan in his hand slightly covering his face, and he exclaimed. As expected of Mr. Kurosaki Makoto, you have a keen observation ability. You saw through my position at once. What do you mean? Ichigo seems to have been attacked, and the spiritual pressure of the stationed Shinigami has dropped significantly, but you are here to block me. At the end of the sentence, a seemingly plain and unpretentious spiritual bow condensed in the hand of Senju Cheng, aiming at Uehara Kisuke. Uehara Kisuke's eyes, hidden in the shadow under the brim of his hat, looked at the spiritual bow in Senju Cheng's hand with a little fear. As a neighbor who has been together for 7 years, Uehara Kisuke already knows very well that the man in front of him is very strong, and much stronger than the average captain. Although this man does not seem to have much interest in training and fighting, he spends most of his time on flower arranging, being a teacher, and training juniors. However, ever since this man defeated Mayuri Kurosaki easily, Uehara Kisuke has never underestimated him. And Senju Cheng appeared here, and seemed to try to rescue Kurosaki Ichigo, which actually dispelled most of Uehara Kisuke's suspicion of Senju Cheng. At least, this is enough to prove that Senju Cheng is definitely not on the side of Aizen Sasuke. Uehara Kisuke's complex psychological activities were not revealed on the surface. Instead, he raised his hands as if he was frightened and made a gesture of surrender, saying, "Misunderstanding, misunderstanding, Mr. Kurosaki Cheng, all this has a reason." Senju Cheng narrowed his eyes slightly, turned his eyes, and looked in the direction of Kurosaki Clinic anxiously, and said, "No matter what the reason is, you get out of my way first, otherwise don't blame me for being rude." Can't Mr. Kurosaki Cheng trust me a little more? Uehara Kisuke seemed to be a little helpless. Trust? What makes you think that my trust in you is more important than the lives of the younger generation of my Kurosaki family? Senju Cheng narrowed his eyes slightly, and spoke harshly, as if he was issuing an ultimatum. Uehara Kisuke, get out of the way. Die. It's really annoying, but Mr. Kurosaki Cheng, I also have reasons why I can't get out of the way. After a pause, Uehara Kisuke slowly pulled out his zanpakutō from his cane, and his eyes hidden under the brim of his hat seemed to have become much sharper, and he said, "But since Mr. Kurosaki Cheng intends to fight, then I can only accompany you for a while. It just so happens that I am also very curious about how strong the unprecedented genius among the Queensies is." Before Uehara Kisuke could finish speaking, the blue light on the spirit bow in Senju Cheng's hand flashed, and a spirit arrow appeared on Uehara Kisuke's face almost instantly. Bang! There was a muffled sound. However, the spirit arrow did not penetrate Uehara Kisuke's head as expected. In front of Uehara Kisuke, a blood-red substance suddenly appeared, blocking the spirit arrow. Cry, Benime. Uehara Kisuke looked at Senju Cheng, who seemed to be really angry, with a look of surprise, and said playfully, "Mr. Kurosaki Cheng is really too much. Did you really want to kill me just now? We have been neighbors for 7 years after all." Uehara Kisuke, I am now quite suspicious of your position and thoughts. Senju Cheng seemed to be a little angry, aiming the spirit bow in his hand at Uehara Kisuke, and said sternly, "Sure enough, for us Queensie, even the gods of death are not trustworthy." The next moment, Senju Cheng's hand on the bowstring suddenly pulled back, and the originally slender spirit arrow also expanded several times. In an instant, Senju Cheng's gentle temperament in the past almost changed, replaced by anger of being betrayed, exuding an amazing aura. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 381 Ching, let me explain. Swoosh. Almost as soon as the work fell, the spirit arrow in Senju Cheng's hand flew out of the bowstring, rolling up an astonishing wave of air and heading straight for Uehara Kisuke. The violent air wave spun around the spirit arrow crazily, almost like the eye of a storm. The moment it was released from the bowstring, the raging air wave almost crushed the windows of the surrounding houses. In Uehara Kisuke's eyes, it was almost visible with the naked eye that everything seemed to be destroyed wherever the spirit arrow passed. Too exaggerated, right? Even though Uehara Kisuke knew a lot about Senju Cheng's fighting style, which was completely different from that of other Queensies, he still felt a huge sense of oppression when he faced it in person. He will die. If he didn't block it, even a captain-level Shinigami would definitely die. Almost in an instant, Uehara Kisuke made a judgment, and the zanpakutō, Benime, in his hand, was released and stabbed directly into the ground. Reformed blood shield. Suddenly, a huge amount of rich blood-red substance was released frantically from the blade and handle of the zanpakutō in Kisuke Uehara's hand, and then condensed into a honeycomb-shaped blood-red shield in front of Kisuke Uehara. Boom. As the spirit arrow collided with the blood shield, the huge impact force pressed on Kisuke Uehara frantically, so that Kisuke Uehara and the blood shield retreated backwards. The road surface poured with asphalt cement instantly appeared large spiderweb-like cracks, and Kisuke Uehara's feet, which served as a fulcrum, even pierced directly into the soil. But even so, Kisuke Uehara's feet inserted into the ground still pushed backwards unrestrainedly. As for the reformed blood shield standing in front of Kisuke Uehara, it also gradually cracked under the spirit arrow whose power was completely unexpected. In an instant, Kisuke Uehara, who had always been a little careless, looked extremely solemn. So strong. In the true sense, pure and incomparable strength, whether it is Ishida Raijin or Kurosaki Masaki at their peak, they are definitely not this strong. At this moment, Uehara Kisuke once again clearly confirmed this fact, but he couldn't help but sweat a little on his forehead, knowing that he seemed to be a little too arrogant. And in the blink of an eye, the reformed blood shield has reached its limit and is about to be on the verge of breaking. Bang! A somewhat crisp and piercing sound of breaking sounded, and at the moment when the blood shield shattered, Uehara Kisuke suddenly raised the zanpakutō in his hand and shouted, "Break, Benime!" Suddenly, the originally broken fragments of the blood shield turned into a large number of blood-red light arrows, and rolled back in the direction of Senju Cheng like a storm. Moreover, Uehara Kisuke took out a small bottle from his other hand and held it in his hand, and began to chant some unknown ghost words. As the ghost words rang out from Uehara Kisuke's mouth, the spirit arrow that had been weakened multiple times quickly dissipated into spirit particles and was sucked into the small bottle in Uehara Kisuke's hand. Spirit refraction, Uehara Kisuke shouted softly, and the spirit particles sucked into the small bottle were reconstructed into the form of a spirit arrow again, and released towards Senju Cheng's position. Showing off your skills in front of an expert. Are you trying to play with the skills of a queen as a god of death? Seeing this, Senju Cheng's expression became more and more unpredictable, and the whole person faced the spirit arrow that was shot at him instead of retreating. The next moment, in the stunned eyes of Uehara Kisuke, Senju Cheng, who was supposed to have a weakness in his body and needed to keep a distance from the enemy at all times during the battle, grabbed the spirit arrow with his hand. In a flash, the spirit arrow with amazing destructive power was already caught in Senju Cheng's hand. Uehara Kisuke. Is this really something a normal queency can do? In Uehara Kisuke's eyes, this scene was almost as outrageous as a normal human catching a bullet with bare hands. The moment Senju Cheng caught the spirit arrow, he turned his body at the same time, and drew his bow and arrow like flowing water, and the spirit arrow shot towards Uehara Kisuke again. This time, Uehara Kisuke had no time to reopen the blood cloud shield and could only instinctively raise his zanpakutō to block. Dang! Fortunately, the power of this spirit arrow was far less than at the beginning, but even so, Uehara Kisuke felt like he was hit by a locomotive head-on, and his body retreated uncontrollably. Too violent. At this moment, this thought instinctively emerged in Uehara Kisuke's mind. Compared with the seemingly elegant and agile fighting style of normal queensies, Kurosaki Makao is almost synonymous with violence and barbarism. At this moment, Uehara Kisuke, whose figure was still being pushed back by the spirit arrow, narrowed his eyes slightly, and glanced behind him, only to find that Senju Cheng had appeared behind him without knowing when. More importantly, a spirit arrow had formed in Senju Cheng's hand again and was aimed at Uehara Kisuke's head. Uehara Kisuke. Oh no! I was completely attracted by Kurosaki Makato's spirit arrow, and forgot that Yorishi reminded me that Kurosaki Makato's speed was also amazing. For a moment, Uehara Kisuke's hair stood up almost instinctively, and a strong and extremely dangerous aura rushed straight to him. Go to hell, god of death! Senju Makao seemed to say angrily, and the moment the fingers pulling the bowstring loosened, at this distance and the speed of the spirit arrow, Uehara Kisuke's headshot would almost happen at the same time. A black shadow swept in at a terrifying speed and appeared in front of Senju Makao, and his delicate and slender hand grasped Senju Makao's right hand that was about to release the bowstring. Shifen Yuan Yorishi. And it was Shifen Yuan Yorishi who maintained his original body. Kurosaki Makao, wait! Shifen Yuan Yorishi said hurriedly. Shifen Yuan Yorishi, are you? At this moment, when the four looked at each other at close range, Shifen Yuan Yorishi clearly saw shock, suspicion, disbelief, anger, sadness and other emotions in Senju Makao's eyes. It was as if a close cat that he had raised for 7 or 8 years had unexpectedly betrayed him. It's not like that, Kurosaki Makoto. Listen to my explanation. Subconsciously, Shifu Yuan Yorishi blurted out a sentence. What else is there to explain? Senju Makoto said angrily, and the complexity in his eyes gradually turned into anger visible to the naked eye, and he violently wanted to break free from Shifu Yuan Yorishi's control. Seeing this, Shifu Yuan Yorishi had no choice but to stick to Senju Makoto almost completely in order to avoid further conflict. While barely entangled with Senju Makoto, he turned back angrily and shouted at Uehara Kisuke. Idiot, what else do you want to test? Hurry up and explain it to Kurosaki Makoto. P.S. The third update is a little late, sorry. Chapter 382 Similar status. Until this moment, the spirit arrows that had been colliding with Uehara Kisuke's zanpakutō slowly dissipated. When Uehara Kisuke turned around, he saw Shifu Yorishi almost completely entangled with Senju Makoto. And Shifu Yorishi's clothing style, even if it was ordinary clothes, was undoubtedly very close to her body, so that she could move at super high speed. This also allowed Senju Makoto to feel every curve of Shifu Yorishi's body almost perfectly when she was close to Senju Makoto. However, although Senju Makoto's heart was shaken, he had to pretend to be angry on the surface, constantly struggling, trying to get rid of Shifu Yorishi's control. However, in addition to Shunpo, Shifu Yorishi's Heikatachi was undoubtedly the top level in the entire Soul Society. Therefore, the struggle between the two was no less than another kind of friction. Senju Makoto. For a moment, Senju Makoto felt like he was riding a tiger and it was difficult to get off. Friction again. It seems impolite, stop struggling. It was completely in conflict with the previous series of disguise results shown to Uehara Kisuke. For the sake of the overall situation, Senju Makoto's face seemed to turn red with anger, and he struggled more and more fiercely. In Uehara Kisuke's eyes, this scene seemed to be a little weird. And Shifu Yuan Yorishi seemed to have overexerted himself, and a hint of redness appeared on his wheat-colored skin. He turned his head again and shouted at Uehara Kisuke. Why are you still standing there? You are, if you don't explain it clearly to Kurosaki Makoto, you're dead. I. Being shouted at by Shifu Yuan Yorishi, Uehara Kisuke subconsciously ignored the strange feeling that just emerged in his mind, scratched his head, and said a little embarrassedly. Mr. Kurosaki Makoto, I'm sorry, can you calm down and listen to me? Calm down. You're telling me to calm down now. Senju Makoto was still struggling violently, and his breathing became obviously rapid due to anger, and he said quite out of control. Were you also the one who arranged the hollows that attacked the Kurosaki clinic? The Kurosaki clan? How did the Kurosaki clan offend you? Unforgivable. Unforgivable. No. Uehara Kisuke waved his hands repeatedly and said. Mr. Kurosaki Makoto, you misunderstood. I have no ill will towards Ichigo Kurosaki. On the contrary, it was Mr. Kurosaki Ishin's intention to stop you from going to the Kurosaki clinic. As he spoke, Uehara Kisuke took out a mobile phone from his arms and handed it to Senju Makoto. On the phone, there was Kurosaki Ishin's awkward and carefree smile, and he spoke. Sorry, Makoto-kun, the incident happened suddenly so I couldn't explain it to you in advance, but the reasons are very complicated, so let Mr. Uehara explain it to you in detail. At the end, Kurosaki Ishin kept bowing to Senju Makoto in the video, begging Senju Makoto to forgive his unreasonable behavior. Seeing this, Makoto Senju also went downhill and stopped struggling as violently as before. After all, if he continued to struggle like this, not to mention whether Shifu Yuan Yorishi could bear it, Makoto Senju also felt a little bit overwhelmed. So, what do you mean by this? Makoto Senju said with some anger. Seeing this, Shifu Yuan Yorishi also quickly let go of Makoto Senju and said. Ahem, Kurosaki Makoto, anyway, the situation is probably like this. Uehara Kisuke secretly discussed some plan with Kurosaki Ishin. After a pause, Shifu Yuan Yorishi seemed to explain and comfort him. The reason why Uehara Kisuke asked me to leave at noon was to explain it to me in advance to avoid further misunderstandings. However, Makoto Senju seemed to have tasted some meaning, turned to look at Uehara Kisuke, and said. So, you are testing me. What are you trying to confirm? Including the changes in the spiritual pressure at the Kurosaki clinic, are you testing me? Seeing that Senju Makoto seemed to have completely calmed down, Uehara Kisuke breathed a sigh of relief and raised his hand in a certain direction. Suddenly, the surrounding ghost barrier quickly dissipated, and Volunteer slowly walked out from a certain direction. Urahara Kisuke scratched his head and exclaimed. Not entirely, it's quite complicated. Let's deal with the problem at the Kuroseki clinic first, and then I will explain it to you in detail. How about it? Senju Makoto looked at Urahara Kisuke deeply, and then looked at Shifen Yuan Yorishi beside him. Feeling Senju Makoto's gaze, Shifen Yuan Yorishi nodded slightly in front of Urahara Kisuke and said, Kisuke is still quite reliable and trustworthy in most cases. Senju Makoto took a deep breath, and the spiritual bow in his hand slowly dissipated, and he spoke. I hope you can give me a full and reasonable explanation. Don't worry, Urahara Kisuke responded casually, and then took the lead and walking towards the direction of Kuroseki Clinic, followed by Senju Makoto and Shifen Yuan Yorishi. When Senju Makoto and others arrived near Kuroseki Clinic, they happened to witness Kuroseki Ichigo, who had received the power of the god of death from Rukia Kachika, wearing a death suit and carrying a strange zanpakutō that looked like a big kitchen knife, splitting the hollow in half with one blow. However, it seemed that it was because of his first experience. After killing the hollow, Kuroseki Ichigo staggered and lost consciousness and fell to the ground. Ichigo. Senju Makoto, who witnessed this scene, acted in a completely consistent manner with the character who valued people of the same clan. He appeared beside Kuroseki Ichigo in a flash and checked on his condition. Spirit, the spirit state is almost exactly the same as that of the god of death in the Seireitei. Almost instantly, in the eyes of Senju Makoto, who once stood at the top of the Soul Society's medical skills, Ichigo Kuroseki's condition was almost completely clear. Then, in front of Urahara Kisuke, Senju Makoto directly attacked Ichigo Kuroseki without any hesitation. Not quite right, this is not a real spirit. Ichigo Kuroseki's soul and this spirit are not perfectly matched. On the contrary, from the subtle structural differences of the spirit, it is more similar to Rukia Kachika's spirit. Well, it's not much different from what I expected. This is a spirit built by relying on Rukia Kachika's power of the god of death, but it is not a spirit formed by Ichigo Kuroseki's soul itself. However, for a human soul that has not yet completely separated from the body, under the influence of this god of death, it seems to be beginning to nurture a real spirit that belongs to it. Wait, Senju Makoto's brows suddenly gathered, and he realized something. In this case, in a sense, Ichigo Kuroseki's soul is a dual body consisting of both the instrument and the spirit. It is somewhat similar to my situation. Chapter 383 Trust. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration seemed to flash through Senju Makoto's mind, and a certain idea was almost grasped, but it seemed to be a little short. A spirit body made of spirit particles. A body made of instrument particles, a similar state to mine. But in the original trajectory, Ichigo Kuroseki also fought without his physical body and fought with his spirit body. Senju Makoto's expression seemed to be stagnant for a moment, and when he reacted again, Urahara Kisuke also came up, poking Ichigo Kuroseki with his cane casually, and spoke in a somewhat nonchalant manner. The situation seems to be a little bad, Miss Kachika Rukia. I'm the manager of Urahara grocery store, and I may have some urgently needed products to provide you. Who are you? Kachika Rukia, who was seriously injured and almost all the power of the god of death was transferred to Ichigo Kuroseki, barely supported her body and spoke suspiciously. A general store manager who has sales channels in both Soul Society and the real world. After a pause, Urahara Kisuke seemed to understand that his image looked quite suspicious. He turned to Senju Makoto, patted Senju Makoto on the shoulder, and said, among them, Mr. Kuroseki Makoto is also a regular customer of the general store. Even if Miss Rukia doesn't believe me, she should believe Mr. Kuroseki Makoto, right? Senju Makoto's face darkened slightly when he heard this, but he also resisted the urge to refute Urahara Kisuke. Under the guarantee of Senju Makoto's reputation, Urahara Kisuke quickly gained the trust of Kachika Rukia, and then sent Ichigo Kuroseki's unconscious spirit back to his body. Urahara's general store employees, Tesnishiya, Tsumage Bayu, and Shintaho Nakari, disguised the entire battle scene and erased the memories of the humans who witnessed the relevant battles. The series of damage caused by the battle was disguised as a dump truck out of control. As for the seriously injured and spiritually powerless Rukia Kachika, she was taken back to the Urahara general store by Urahara Kisuke, who then recommended to her immortal body that claimed to be able to heal injuries and accelerate the recovery of spiritual power. After entering the mortal body, Rukia Kachiki was arranged by Uehara Kisuke to a basement, and slowly got familiar with the mortal body. When Uehara Kisuke looked back at Senju Makotao spoke with a very alert and sharp look. Uehara Kisuke, it's about time you open your mouth and explain everything, otherwise I will have no choice but to take Rukia Kachiki away by force. In the shadows, Uehara Kisuke's aura became slightly serious and solemn, and he spoke slowly. Indeed, all this should be explained to Mr. Kurosaki Makotao. I believe that Mr. Kurosaki Makotao has been acquainted with several captains of the Seireitei for several years, and after gradually understanding the GOTY 13, he should have some vague guesses about the identities of me and Yorishi, right? After a pause, Uehara Kisuke slowly raised his head and said, I'm Uehara Kisuke, the former captain of the 12th Division, and Yorishi is the former captain of the 2nd Division. Then, Uehara Kisuke began to roughly recount the events starting from the holoification incident, and then said, I have to say that I seem to have been fooled back then. I didn't realize that the Hogyoku, which can allow Shinigami and Hollows to break through the evolutionary boundaries, itself has a strong tendency to evolve. After I continued to improve the Hogyoku in my hand to a certain extent, it has begun to show a tendency to evolve itself, and is also faintly attracting another Hogyoku in the dark. Although I tried to suppress it with various means and ghost hearts, the effect is still not great. Uehara Kisuke said with a solemn expression. In addition to the indestructible nature of the Hogyoku, this has undoubtedly become a hot potato. The Hogyoku in Aizen Sosok's hand is likely to be eager to devour and fuse the Hogyoku in my hand, and sooner or later, through the deepening attraction between the Hogyoku, Aizen Sosok will be aware of my hiding place. Senju Makotao frowned slightly and said, So, your target is Rukia Kachiki. Right. Uehara Kisuke nodded and said, Rukia Kachiki has a special identity. I plan to use Rukia Kachiki, who has committed a serious crime, to secretly bring the Hogyoku back to the Seireitei. By then, even if Aizen Sosok realizes that the Hogyoku is in Rukia Kachiki's body. But because Rukia Kachiki has committed a serious crime, the eyes of the entire Seireitei will definitely be on Rukia Kachiki at all times. Once Aizen Sosok is eager to take risks, it will be the moment to reveal his flaws and reveal his true face. Senju Makotao closed his eyelids slightly, as if he was thinking about something, then opened his eyes and looked at Uehara Kisuke, always maintaining his identity and position as a member of the Kurosaki clan, and questioned. It's still not right. Why did you choose Ichigo as your target? This will undoubtedly put Ichigo Kurosaki in great danger. This involves another secret. Mr. Kurosaki Ishin's real name is Shiba Ishin, and he is the former captain of the 10th Division. Finally, after Uehara Kisuke was questioned so hard that sweat broke out on his forehead, Senju Makotao seemed to have regained some trust in Uehara Kisuke, and after stating that he would definitely monitor Uehara Kisuke's actions at all times, he left Uehara grocery store. Uehara Kisuke watched Senju Makotao's back as he left, and Wallentraza came out from behind a door on the side, holding a strange-shaped instrument in his hand, and answered. Manager, no problem. According to the polygraph, there was no problem with Mr. Kurosaki Makotao during the entire communication process. Shifu Yuan Yorishi, who had been leaning on the side, heard this and spoke with an unexpected look on his face. Kisuke, you still don't trust Kurosaki Makotao. Yoichi, there's nothing we can do about it. Our opponent is Aizen Sosok, so we should be more vigilant, but this is the last test, Uehara Kisuke said, stroking his chin. A lie detector is a test of a body made up of organs. Even a mirror flower and a water moon shouldn't be able to hide from such an unexpected instrument. Are you so suspicious? Shifu Yuan Yorishi frowned. Uehara Kisuke raised a finger and said as a matter of course. Don't talk about Kurosaki Makotao. In fact, in order to ensure that Yorishi is not a fake, I also secretly conducted a similar test on Yorishi. You're really annoying. Shifu Yuan Yorishi gritted his teeth and said, and his figure disappeared instantly, as if he had no interest in continuing to talk nonsense with Uehara Kisuke. Left alone at the door of the Uehara grocery store, Uehara Kisuke, with a messy expression, blinked and said unconsciously. Yoichi, what's going on? Standing behind Uehara Kisuke, Gurikites pushed up his glasses and said softly. It's okay, manager. Yoichi will understand your difficulties like I do sooner or later. Chapter 384. Using my strengths to attack the enemy's weaknesses. At this moment, the sky was already getting light. Makotao Senju was walking alone on the road from Uehara grocery store to the flower shop. His expression seemed to be relaxed as if he was taking a walk, but his slightly squinted eyes showed that he was thinking about something. Although under Makoto Senju's questioning, Urahara Kisuke seemed to have told all the secrets without reservation. Moreover, Makoto Senju verified these secrets with everything he knew, and there was no flaw at all, as if everything Urahara Kisuke did was to expose the true face of Aizen Sasuke. As for Ichigo Kurosaki, it was at the strong request of Isshin Kurosaki that he thought he might be able to take the opportunity to help Ichigo Kurosaki awaken his own power, so he took advantage of the situation and involved Ichigo Kurosaki. However, after confirming that Ichigo Kurosaki was in a state that was somewhat similar to his own in a certain sense, Makoto Senju couldn't help but have some doubts. This guy Urahara Kisuke might be far from that simple. His logic of action has faintly exceeded the scope of self-protection, but it seems that he has some longer-term plans. However, after this series of tests, Urahara Kisuke's trust in me should have increased a lot. At this moment, a black shadow swept towards Senju Makoto and stopped in front of Senju Makoto. Kuronko Yorishi. The beautiful cat eyes were looking at Senju Makoto, as if wanting to confirm something. Senju Makoto showed a bright and brilliant smile on his face, opened his hands to Kuronko Yorishi and asked, "Go home together." Kuronko Yorishi's eyes could not help but flash a little touched. Kuronko Yorishi originally thought that Senju Makoto could no longer trust him, but the invitation with open hands undoubtedly made Kuronko Yorishi realize that his worries were unnecessary. Compared with Urahara Kisuke's suspicion, Senju Makoto's magnanimity almost formed a sharp contrast. Then, Kuronko Yorishi lightly jumped and fell into the familiar embrace again, and this time he almost subconsciously rubbed against Senju Makoto's arms intimately. Makoto Senju's palm gently strode Kuronko Yorishi's soft and smooth fur, and his pace back to the flower shop could not help but speed up a little. Urahara Kisuke had been testing him all night, and he had deliberately cooperated all night, so while it was still early, it wouldn't be too much to take Kuronko Yorishi back to catch up on some sleep, right? When Makoto Senju, who had a great time petting cats, hurried to Karakura First High School for class, there were 2 more transfer students in Ichigo Kurosaki's class. Rukia Kachika, Ryashida, among them. Rukia Kachika, who had a onion head and a plain figure, did not cause any commotion, but Ryashida's handsome and elegant temperament made many girls feel excited. That scene made Makoto Senju sigh again. Life at Karakura Girls' High School is so good, being in youth, without any pressure in life, you can pursue the things you like without restraint. As a result, the behavior of Kachika Rukia, who often dragged Kurosaki Ichigo out to solve urgent matters during class, was undoubtedly more like some kind of unspoken meaning in the eyes of many classmates. Among them, under Senju Makoto's observation, Inuyaoraime was almost visibly depressed. Even Senju Makoto gently knocked on Inuyaoraime's desk 3 times, and Inuyaoraime came back to her senses a little bit slowly. Senju Makoto spoke gently. "Inuya classmate, don't forget to go to the flower shop to work part-time tomorrow." Hearing this, Inuyaoraime's gloomy eyes seemed to have regained some light, and she quickly spoke. "Yes, thank you Kurosaki teacher." "Yeah." Then, Senju Makoto, who finished teaching, didn't say anything else and left the classroom directly. When Senju Makoto returned to the flower shop, there was an unexpected customer in the flower shop, Kurosaki Isshin. And Kurosaki Isshin's condition is not very good, at least his artificial body is not very good, with multiple fractures on his body and an open wound on his skull that is bleeding continuously. Makoto Senju asked, Hey, Isshin, do you need me to ask Raijin to drive the ambulance over?" Isshin Kurosaki sighed and said, "It's okay, Makoto, just let me hide here for a while." "What's going on?" Makoto Senju asked, after motioning Synopsis to prepare tea. Isshin Kurosaki's expression twitched slightly and said, "After Masaki knew about Ichigo, he drugged me out." Makoto Senju. It must be said that the current relationship between Isshin Kurosaki and Masaki Kurosaki is that Isshin Kurosaki has completely lost the power of the god of death, while Masaki Kurosaki can still use the power of the Queen Sea, which has led to a serious inequality between the couple. Usually, Masaki Kurosaki's personality is gentle and kind, and Isshin Kurosaki has not yet experienced some horrible facts, but at this moment, Isshin Kurosaki's slightly trembling eyes undoubtedly reveal a certain emotion called fear. This feeling, Makoto Senju, is very familiar. Very familiar. I understand. Senju Makoto patted Kurosaki Isshin's shoulder and said, "However, how can a man submit to his wife?" As a man, he must have the absolute belief of turning over and becoming the master no matter what, turning the passive into the active, and making the offensive and defense easy. In an instant, Kuroseki Ishin's eyes, which showed fear, slightly brightened, as if he had found a soulmate, and asked, "Makoto, do you have any good ideas?" "Of course I do." Senju Makoto picked up the teacup and turned it slowly, with a light cold wisdom in his eyes, and said, "As a famous flower arrangement artist in Karakura town, I have seen countless couples, and I have accumulated considerable experience in this regard." Immediately, Kuroseki Ishin knelt in front of Senju Makoto and asked with a focused and serious look, "Please give me your advice, thank you very much." "Don't worry," Senju Makoto put the teacup on the table and said word by word. "In the final analysis, the core is still 8 words, use my strengths to attack the enemy's weaknesses. However, based on these 8 words, the specific actions are: when the enemy advances, we retreat. When the enemy retreats, we advance. When the enemy is tired, we attack. We pursue and attack relentlessly, and dig deep into the root cause. Among them, based on my understanding of Masaki, there are many details that need special attention, such as." Then, Senju Makoto talked to Kuroseki Ishin, imparting his rich experience accumulated over the years. Kuroseki Ishin listened to the teachings seriously, and even took out a small notebook from his arms and recorded them attentively. Suddenly, Kuroseki Ishin seemed to realize something and was stunned for a moment. "Wait, Makoto is too familiar with Masaki, right?" Chapter 385 Under one person. However, Ishin Kuroseki, who was kicked out of the house, obviously had no way out. He could only try to stand up in front of Masaki Kuroseki under the advice of Makoto Senju, an experienced person. Of course, although Ishin Kuroseki tried to stand up for several days in a row, he was still quickly suppressed in front of Masaki Kuroseki, who was soft on the outside and strong on the inside. For Masaki Kuroseki, who attaches great importance to family, Ishin Kuroseki's approach has undoubtedly touched Masaki Kuroseki's bottom line to some extent. As for Ichigo Kuroseki, although he did not want the danger to affect his relatives and friends, he subconsciously resisted the power of the god of death on his body. However, Rukia Kachika bluntly said that she had temporarily lost all her power. If Ichigo Kuroseki did not help deal with the hollows that appeared in Karakura town, then not only Ichigo Kuroseki's relatives and friends, but also the souls of many ordinary people will be constantly devoured. Under such circumstances, Ichigo Kuroseki, who inherited the kindness of Kuroseki Masaki, could only start to familiarize himself with the power under the guidance of Kachika Rukia, and began to fight against the hollows. Although Kachika Rukia naively thought that all this had been hidden from the Seireitei, in fact, almost all of her actions were carried out under the eyes hidden behind her. Ichigo Kuroseki's growth and changes in every battle, and his amazing mastery of the power of the god of death, in addition, in the eyes of Makoto Senju, who would intentionally or unintentionally contact Ichigo Kuroseki once a day at Karakura Daiichi High School, Ichigo Kuroseki's self-spirit hidden in the surface spirit was also constantly forming. As for Rukia Kachika, Makoto Senju did not deliberately contact her. Collapse. Or rather, the collapse that was not truly completed did not have any real meaning for Makoto Senju. However, Makoto Senju undoubtedly confirmed the fact, that is, the collapse also possessed a certain power of name. And the broken jade hidden in Rukia Kachika's body has unconsciously affected the surrounding humans with Rukia Kachika as the center. Bang! On this day, just as Makoto Senju was about to enter the classroom, a series of noisy sounds rang out in the classroom. As Makoto Senju pushed the teachers away, the thin-looking Ishirai grabbed the tall Kuroseki Ichigo's neck with one hand and pressed him heavily against the wall. Behind Ishirai, a large number of desks were almost knocked away by a bull to open a path. No one thought that the usually handsome and elegant Ishirai would have such a violent side, and such amazing power burst out from his thin body that one hand was enough to pinch Kuroseki Ichigo's neck and lift him up. Moreover, Chidori Sutura, who was almost regarded as a muscle monster, subconsciously wanted to protect Kuroseki Ichigo, but was slapped away by Ishirai and hit the wall on the other side. At this moment, the whole classroom was almost in a state of panic. "What are you doing?" Senju Makoto's face darkened slightly, and he shouted. In an instant, everyone in the classroom subconsciously cast their eyes towards Senju Makoto. However, many students did not subconsciously breathe a sigh of relief for Senju Makoto's appearance, but instead became worried about him. In the eyes of the students, the suddenly changed Ishirai was almost like a monster. How could he be intimidated by just a few shouts from a teacher? Teacher Kurosaki, Ishida is crazy. Teacher Kurosaki, go and notify the Metropolitan Police Department to come over, otherwise Ichigo may be strangled to death. So scary, how could it become like this? Amidst a noisy voice, Senju Makoto walked into the classroom step by step, and shouted in an unexpected tone. Ishida, let go. Do you think school is a place where you can do whatever you want? Ishida hesitated, as if he wanted to refute something. However, Senju Makoto did not give Ishida a chance to speak, and said in a deep voice. I don't care what your reason is, this can't be your explanation. Now, let go, apologize, and get out. Ishida's chest rose and fell rapidly, and the hand that was pinching Kurosaki Ichigo slowly loosened, then reluctantly bowed to Kurosaki Ichigo, Chad Tateru and other students, and walked out without saying a word. However, with the classroom destroyed like this, it was obviously impossible to start normal classes immediately. Then, after Senju Makoto asked the other students to tidy up their desks, the class was barely restored to order. At the same time, Ishida, who walked out of the school angrily, suddenly stopped and looked at the person in front of him who was dressed a little weird. Mr. Ishida, excuse me, I wonder if you're interested in the goods in the store. Urahara Kisuke pushed his hat and started to promote like a salesperson. Get out. Ishida said indifferently, and walked around Urahara Kisuke and prepared to leave. Urahara Kisuke continued to speak slowly. Mr. Ishida, why don't you first find out what specific products you have? I know very well that Mr. Ishida is determined to become the strongest quincy. Now seeing Mr. Ishida's distressed look, could it be that he is hindered by the improvement of his strength? It doesn't matter, Urahara Kisuke said naggingly. As long as the customer's request is met, the store will always meet it. Among them, the store has an item called Hollow Bait, which can attract hollows from the Hutomundo to the real world, so that Mr. Ishida can conduct real combat training and quickly improve his strength. Hearing this, Ishida paused and asked as if he had thought of something. Is there really such a thing? Of course, as a general store with branches in the real world and soul society, the customers we face are special people like Mr. Ishida who have spiritual powers, and the products have always been fair to everyone, and we also support invalid refunds. Urahara Kisuke said with a smile. Ishida pushed his glasses and spoke. Give me one, the price is not a problem. Thank you for your patronage. Urahara Kisuke's smile became even wider. Also, Ishida stared at Urahara Kisuke and said in a serious tone. My goal is not to be the strongest quincy, but to be the quincy under one person. What? Urahara Kisuke, who was taking out the hollow bait from his pocket and handing it to Ishida, paused. Under one person. Chapter 386 at Karakura First High School. As the school bell rang, students swarmed out of the school gate. Makoto Senju, who had finished the day's class, took Orai Minue to the flower shop. After Orai Minue had undergone Synopsis initial teaching, she was undoubtedly a qualified trainee clerk. Originally, Orai Minue's part-time job at the flower shop was limited to weekends, but considering that Orai Minue went home after school at night to cook for herself, it was also a strange thing. So, at the invitation of Makoto Senju, Orai Minue now works part-time at the flower shop for a period of time every night. This also made Orai Minue more grateful for Makoto Senju's care. She worked very seriously every time and repaid Makoto Senju's gentleness with absolute competence. Orai, what happened in the classroom today? Makoto Senju asked. Teacher Kurosaki, are you asking about the conflict between Ichigo and Ishida? Orai Minue confirmed. That's right. Makoto Senju nodded. As Ishida's de facto teacher, Senju Makoto is quite familiar with Ishida's character. He is a typical person who is cold on the outside but warm on the inside. Although he seems to be difficult to get along with, this arrogant boy is actually willing to return others' kindness to him tenfold. Therefore, it is undoubtedly quite strange for Senju Makoto to think that Ishida would not hesitate to attack Kurosaki Ichigo in front of ordinary people. This, in a day Orai lowered her head slightly and said in an unnatural tone. I don't know much about this. At the time, Ichigo and Kachiki seemed to be whispering together. Ishida happened to pass by and a conflict suddenly broke out. Really? I hope Kurosaki and Ishida can get along well in the future, Senju Makoto said casually, and he didn't mean to go into the details. In the final analysis, in Senju Makoto's view, the actions of Kurosaki Ichigo and Ishidarai were more like the play and conflict between children. As an elder, he should just stop them a little. If he personally went to the scene, he would not know which side to support. Relatively speaking, what Makoto Senju was more concerned about was undoubtedly the injury on Inoue ankle, which was a big like being pinched by a hand. The remnants of the hollow spirit particles, Makoto Senju's eyes flickered slightly. If Makoto Senju remembered correctly, when Inoue left the flower shop last night, her ankle did not have this injury. Orihime, did anything special happen last night? Makoto Senju asked with concern. Special things? What do you mean, Mr. Kurosaki? Inoue asked puzzledly. For example, after you fell asleep, did you feel that some monster climbed onto your bed? When he said this, Makoto Senju's voice paused, and he always felt that he seemed to be describing something very strange to his students. Well, nothing. Makoto Senju changed his tone and continued. If Orihime encounters something that she can't solve, she can ask the teacher for help. Yes, thank you, Mr. Kurosaki. Inoue said gratefully and energetically. After arriving at the flower shop, she put on the flower shop employee apron without waiting for Makoto Senju's instructions and began to help Synopsis take care of the flower shop. Makoto Senju watched all this with a gentle smile on his face, and then greeted Isshin Kurosaki who was sitting inside waiting for him. Compared with the multiple fractures and serious injuries at the beginning, Isshin Kurosaki at this moment seemed even more miserable. His whole head was like a pig's head, and his arm drooped on one side seemed to have a comminuted fracture. Only the temperament of still holding a cigarette firmly in his mouth made Makoto Senju barely recognize Isshin Kurosaki's identity. Isshin Kurosaki's lips, which were half swollen, gently exhaled a puff of smoke, and slowly spoke with a melancholy look. Not very good, Makoto-kun. In fact, even if Kurosaki Isshin didn't say it, Senju Makoto could tell from Kurosaki Isshin's injuries that he was about to die. However, there was no hesitation or confusion on Senju Makoto's face, and he stepped forward and said, Isshin, a journey of 100 miles begins with a single step. There is no point in giving up halfway. The theory we discussed before is impeccable. Perhaps it's just a lack of persistence. Persistence? Kurosaki Isshin exhaled a puff of smoke again, and his eyes gradually became firm again, and he said, That's right, it's too early to give up now. Yes, that's right, Senju Makoto sincerely encouraged Kurosaki Isshin with his eyes, and helped Kurosaki Isshin to pave the psychological construction for the last section of the road. Are you kidding? If there really was a way to defeat the strong with the weak, would Senju Makoto have retreated countless times in front of Unohana Retsu in the past? The stacked throat and the hot spring stained with blood recorded every bit of blood and tears that happened to Senju Makoto. With his goal reaffirmed, Kurosaki Isshin staggered out of the flower shop, holding a bouquet of carnations given by Makoto Senju for free. Isshin, I will always wait for your good news. Makoto Senju said with blessings. Don't worry. Kurosaki Isshin nodded heavily, and his eyes unconsciously fell on Inoue who was seeing off the guests beside Makoto Senju. He seemed to have thought of something and said with a wink. Makoto, you are worthy of it. No wonder you became a flower arrangement teacher. Did you aim at a young and energetic girl? Makoto Senju. As for Inoue, her face flushed instantly. However, before Makoto Senju could explain, Kurosaki Isshin patted Makoto Senju on the shoulder and said in the tone of an experienced person. I understand, and Makoto-kun has a good eye. I watched her grow up, and she's a very beautiful girl. Then, Kurosaki Isshin gave Senju Makoto a thumbs up, put his mouth close to Senju Makoto's ear, and whispered. Actually, I took advantage of Masaki's high school days and opened a store near the school, so that we could get to know each other, hehe. At the end, Kurosaki Isshin seemed to be aroused by his once passionate youth, and enthusiastically told how he completely won over Kurosaki Masaki. That series of words made Inoue blush, but her eyes unconsciously glanced at Senju Makoto. Could it be that Mr. Kurosaki really has this plan? What should I do? What should I do? Mr. Kurosaki's intention, can it be really rejected? But Mr. Kurosaki is so excellent and gentle, so perfect that if I refuse. Chapter 387. Don't bring danger to Mr. Kurosaki. And just as Inouye's little head was thinking of a series of different plots in the blink of an eye, Senju Makoto's eyes could not help but become more playful. If it was because of his appearance that Ichigo Kurosaki and Inoue were not able to get together in the end, it would be fine. If Ichigo Kurosaki and Inoue still got married, then things would become interesting. Isshin Kurosaki once gave advice to others and taught them how to push their future daughter-in-law. Okay, in the end, after Senju Makoto interrupted, Isshin Kurosaki smacked his lips with some unsatisfied feelings, as if witnessing his once rising glory at this moment, and left the flower shop unwillingly. Then, Makoto Senju looked at the blushing Inoue beside him, and said with a gentle smile, "Orihime, don't pay attention to Isshin, that idiot, he just likes to talk nonsense and brag sometimes." "Yes, Mr. Kurosaki." Inoue responded quickly. "Well, let's have dinner first and then work hard," Senju Makoto said gently, asking Orihime to eat together. Orihime, who was extremely diligent, rushed to wash the dishes and was busy until late at night, and then she finished her work and left the flower shop. However, after there was no work to distract her attention, Orihime's little head couldn't help but think of what Kurosaki Isshin said again. No way. Kurosaki teacher can't possibly like a fool like me. In addition to causing all kinds of troubles to Kurosaki teacher, I'm usually taken care of by Kurosaki teacher and can't help at all, maybe? Kurosaki teacher is simply pitying me. Finally, Senju Makoto's gentle smile appeared in Orihime's mind, and Orihime, who was immersed in emotions, couldn't help but become more depressed and inferior. However, what Orihime didn't know was, behind her, a black cavity slowly opened. A hollow that normal humans couldn't even look at walked out of the black cavity slowly, staring at Orihime, who was walking with her head down with a look of hatred and nothingness. Then, the hollow approached Orihime step by step. As the hollow approached, an invisible pressure inexplicably pressed on Orihime's heart, and she had a strange feeling, and her head subconsciously turned left and right. At this moment, Orihime suddenly saw that there seemed to be some kind of monster in the darkness behind her, whose outline was not even clear. Bang! The next moment, the palm of the hollow suddenly slapped Orihime's back, and Orihime flew several meters away. The friction between her delicate skin and the road caused a lot of scratches on her body almost instantly. Monsters really exist. Orihime, who was almost suffocated by the slap, had a certain idea in her mind, and looked back at the place behind her. It seems that due to the concentration of attention, or the violent fluctuation of emotions, the spiritual power of Orihime suddenly increased, and she completely reached the level of spiritual vision, that is, she can see the existence of the spirits of death and hollows as a human. Pale mask, resentful and empty eyes, monster-like body. When Orihime saw the appearance of the hollow for the first time, her face turned pale unconsciously, and fear arose spontaneously. Run! Orihime did not hesitate at all. When she propped up her body and ran away, she almost instinctively ran back to the direction of the flower shop. In a sense, compared with the home where she was alone, in Orihime's heart, the flower shop was more like a safe haven. However, just when Orihime ran to the corner, she could vaguely see Synopsis closing the door of the flower shop, and Orihime hesitated. No. I can't bring danger to Mr. Kurosaki. Orihime suddenly stopped, her eyes reflecting the door of the flower shop, but she ran in the opposite direction of the flower shop without hesitation. However, Orihime obviously misjudged the speed of the hollow. At the moment when Orihime hesitated, the hollow that was following behind Orihime and seemed to be moving very slowly suddenly appeared behind Orihime. Orihime! The hollow chanted Orihime name, and the palm of its hand, which was almost as big as Orihime body, quickly closed towards Orihime. Shadow is looming. Although Orihime athletic ability is far from being as slow as imagined, it is undoubtedly impossible for her to move again when her body has just stopped. At this moment, Orihime could only watch the terrifying palm looming over her, but her body was completely unable to react. Is it the end? Orihime's eyes flashed with despair, and her blank mind could only passively accept the approach of death. At this moment, a familiar white shirt blocked the way in front of Orihime. Blab, Mr. Kurosaki. Orihime was stunned, but she immediately recognized that the person standing in front of her was the usually gentle and elegant Mr. Kurosaki. However, at this moment, Mr. Kurosaki raised one hand slightly, as if he was raising his hand to block some raindrops falling in front of him, and his movements were extremely relaxed. Senju Makoto turned his head and looked at the wide-eyed Orihime behind him, with scratches all over her body, and asked, Oriime, why did you stop? I was almost late. As soon as Inoue Oriime was attacked by the hollow, Senju Makoto noticed the changes in Inoue Oriime's body based on the forest vessel. The spiritual power was increasing. Therefore, Senju Makoto, who could no longer remember the specific details of the awakening power of Inoue Oriime in the original trajectory, did not immediately stop it, but planned to wait and see how the situation developed, hoping that Inoue Oriime would directly awaken some kind of power. However, what Makoto Senju did not expect was that after getting up, Oriime Inoue subconsciously ran away, and, even though she had already seen the flower shop, Oriime Inoue hesitated and paused, which caused Oriime Inoue's situation to get worse in an instant. In order to save Oriime Inoue's life, and because Makoto Senju sensed that Ichigo Kurosaki's spiritual pressure was not nearby, he had no choice but to appear in front of Oriime Inoue. I. Facing Makoto Senju's gentle and reliable eyes, Oriime Inoue pursed her lips and said in a low voice. Yes, I'm sorry, but I don't want Mr. Kurosaki to fall into danger because of me. P.S. Today is an important traditional festival in my hometown, the New Year's Day. Because there are a lot of things to do, I have to take a small leave and only update twice. Sorry. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 388. I am a waste. At the same time, in an empty football field next to Kurakura Daiichi High School, Kurosaki Ichigo fell down, holding the giant zanpakutō in both hands and slashing forward. The violent momentum, the giant zanpakutō that seemed to be almost the same size as Ishidarai, seemed to be about to split Ishidarai in half in an instant. However, Ishidarai simply raised the spirit bow in his hand and blocked it upwards, and easily blocked the attack. What? Kurosaki Ichigo looked at the seemingly thing, wearing a pair of glasses, and with a cold and calm expression below in disbelief. However, Kurosaki Ichigo gritted his teeth and shouted. Get out of the way. Ishidarai, can't you sense that a hollow has appeared? I sensed it, so what? Ishidarai responded, and with a little force on his arm holding the spirit bow, he pushed Kurosaki Ichigo out, so that Kurosaki Ichigo, who fell on the lawn, slid more than 10 meters before reluctantly stopping. The huge gap made Ichigo Kurosaki's expression particularly solemn and ugly. Rukia Kachika, who was standing next to him, also frowned with her pretty eyebrows. Then, Ryashida lowered his head slightly, pushed his glasses, and spoke slowly. Ichigo Kurosaki, I didn't want to care about the things between you despicable Shinigami, even though I have been in the same classroom with you, and I have been thinking about killing you all the time. These hostile words made Ichigo Kurosaki unconsciously tighten his hands holding the giant zanpakutō, and then he asked. Why? We're classmates. Instead of using your power to fight me, you might as well use it to destroy the hollows. Puff, Ryashida couldn't help but laugh sarcastically and said. As expected, Kurosaki Ichigo, you dare to speak so brazenly without knowing anything, which is really funny. I have just become a deputy god of death, but I understand that it is right to destroy the monster-like hollows and protect humans from being attacked. Kurosaki Ichigo said in a deep voice. Then do you know that the monster-like hollows you are talking about are also transformed from human souls? After a pause, Ishidarai glanced at Kachika Rukia standing on the other side in front of Kurosaki Ichigo's shocked eyes and spoke. And it's not that the Quincy clan chose not to destroy the hollows to protect all mankind, but the god of death once took the initiative to launch an extermination war against the Quincy in order to compete for the qualification to destroy the hollows. So, do you still think it's right to preach to me and accuse me as a Quincy of not destroying the hollows to protect humans as a god of death? As soon as these words came out, Kurosaki Ichigo's eyes were undoubtedly shaken, and he looked in the direction of Kachika Rukia with some doubt. For Ichigo Kurosaki, who had just become the deputy god of death, everything he knew about the relationship between the god of death and the hollows came from Rukia Kachika's narration. Shallow and simple, originally, in Ichigo Kurosaki's view, the group of god of death was more like silently protecting humans from the attacks of the hollows in a world that humans had no way of knowing. Therefore, although Ichigo Kurosaki was a little worried that accepting this power would gradually spread the danger to his family, he had undoubtedly gradually recognized his identity as the deputy god of death. Rukia, is what Ishidarai said true? Ichigo Kurosaki couldn't help but ask. Rukia Kachika gritted her teeth and exclaimed. I have heard some rumors about it, but I might not have been born at the time, so I don't know the specific situation. There may be other hidden secrets. Ichigo Kurosaki's eyes flickered, as if he had some struggle and hesitation, and then quickly became firm and said, I don't know much about the past, but I know what I should do now is to destroy the Hollows. No hurry, I'm going to play a game with you to prove that the god of death has no right to be arrogantly superior to the Quincy. The hollow that just appeared is just a small additional item. As Ishirai said this, he took out a hollow bait that looked like a coin from his arms. Wait, Ishirai, what are you going to do? Kachika Rukia seemed to have thought of something and asked in a panic. If you're angry about the conversation between Ichigo and me in the classroom today, I'm willing to apologize. Apologize? Who did you think you were accusing and slandering at the time? Ishirai, whose expression had always been extremely calm and indifferent, seemed to be completely enraged by the memories he recalled, and his expression revealed an uncontrollable anger. Hey, Ichigo, do you know that Kurosaki teacher? Rukia, why are you asking that? Is there something wrong with him? Yes, that guy is a Quincy. Quincy? What is that? They are a group of humans who have the power to destroy hollows. Is he very strong? Is Kurosaki Makatao very strong? He is just average, a jerk with some mean and bad tastes, and that guy has been secretly writing letters to please my captain for many years in order to protect the Quincy clan. I see, no wonder I have never seen him use his power or destroy hollows in all these years. Recalling this, the hollow bait in Ishirai's hand was completely crushed, and a series of crackling sounds were made when the joints of his hand exerted force. For Ishirai, Senju Makatao is undoubtedly the most respected existence in the world. It turned out that Ishirai, who had a very calm personality, was on the verge of losing control after accidentally hearing the conversation between Kachika Rukia and Kurosaki Ichigo. Waste. He is a waste, and Ishirai is a waste among wastes. The Shinigami attacked Grandpa, which indirectly led to his seemingly unclear death a few years later. Ishirai, that despicable and cowardly guy, never said a word, and was indifferent to the evil deeds that the Shinigami continued to commit against the Quincy clan. But Uncle Kurosaki Makatao once defeated the captain of the 12th Division among the Shinigami in order to protect himself and Grandpa, at the great risk of being liquidated by the Seireitei. Even over the years, Uncle Kurosaki Makatao has been enduring humiliation. As powerful as Uncle Kurosaki Makatao is, in order to protect the entire Quincy clan, he actually put aside his pride as a Quincy and constantly tried to communicate with the captains of the Shinigami through letters. Chapter 389. Absolutely unacceptable. I have been taught how to practice by Uncle Kurosaki Makatao all these years. And I have been receiving the favor of being protected by Uncle Kurosaki Makatao behind my back. For this, Uncle Kurosaki Makatao has endured so much contempt and infamy in the jingling court all these years, and so much ridicule and contempt in secret. I can't accept it. I absolutely can't accept it. I absolutely can't accept it no matter what. Under the intense emotional fluctuations, Ishirai's eyes were visibly bloodshot, and he murmured, I'm an incompetent waste, but Uncle Kurosaki is definitely not. Ishirai held the spirit bow tightly in his hand and stared at the night sky, saying firmly, Today, I will clear the name of Uncle Kurosaki Makatao in front of the entire Seireitei. With the corpses of countless hollows, I will tell all the Shinigami, not all queens are useless, and Uncle Kurosaki Makatao is stronger than everyone else. As Ishirai finished speaking, in front of the shocked eyes of Ichigo Kurosaki and Rukia Kachika, the sky of almost the entire Karakura town was almost densely packed with black cavities. One after another, the breath of hollows broke into the perception of Ichigo Kurosaki and Rukia Kachika. Ishirai, what did you do? Ichigo Kurosaki asked in shock and anger. Hollow bait. Something that can attract a large number of hollows from the Huko Mundo. It is said that it can even attract large hollows. Ishirai replied. Are you crazy? Do you know how serious the consequences of this will be? Ichigo Kurosaki shouted angrily. Don't worry, Ishirai pulled off the Karakura First High School uniform jacket on his body and threw it on the lawn, revealing a white shirt that fits tightly to his body, and spoke. The consequences that you, as a Shinigami, cannot bear will be borne by me, as a Quincy. The hollows that you, as a Shinigami, cannot eliminate will be eliminated by me, as a Quincy. That's all. As Ishirai finished speaking, the spirit bow in his hand was instantly pulled to full string, and 9 spirit arrows condensed and aimed at the hollows that had just emerged from the black cavity under the night sky. and the changes that affected the entire Karakura town were undoubtedly noticed by the strong men hidden in Karakura town at the first time. Uehara Kisuke, Kyoshi Kuroseki Ishin, Kuroseki Masaki, Senju Makoto, Shuin Yorishi and the entire masked corps, in a base that looked like an abandoned warehouse. The masked corps members, led by captain-level Shinigami such as Hirako Makoto and Road Guru Makensei, looked at the hollows that kept emerging in the night sky. It seems to be getting lively. How many hollow baits did Uehara Kisuke accidentally break? This seems to be a big deal. Should we take action? No, such a big action should directly attract the attention of the Seireitei, right? If we take action, we will probably be noticed. In a secret space somewhere in the Seireitei, Aiden Sasuke supported his face with one hand and gently tapped the armrest of the seat with the other hand, looking calmly at the screen in front of him that was monitoring various parts of Karakura town. Don Aiden Sasuke's eyes flickered slightly, and he chuckled and said, "Interesting, are you a little impatient already? Uehara Kisuke, if that's the case, then why not make it a little more lively?" And at the corner of the street not far from the flower shop, Senju Makoto was also looking up at the hollows that appeared simultaneously in various parts of Karakura town. The number is quite astonishing. From a distance, it was like moths coming out one after another onto the night sky that looked like a curtain. How did it suddenly become like this? Senju Makoto couldn't help but frown slightly. For Senju Makoto, Karakura town, where he had lived for 7 years, was undoubtedly a place where he was familiar with every plant and tree, and he had some feelings for it. Under the effect of this degree of hollow bait, it was very likely that a large number of casualties would occur if something unexpected happened. Perhaps, after a night, when Senju Makoto woke up again, he would no longer see those familiar faces on his way to Karakura First High School every day. Moreover, the astonishing number of hollows that kept appearing in the night sky in front of him was obviously different from the original trajectory that Senju Makoto remembered. The number was obviously much larger. Before Senju Makoto could further confirm the situation, the hollow that had attacked Inoue seemed to become more and more crazy under the stimulation of the hollow bait. Suddenly, this made the hollow that had inexplicably feared Senju Makoto suddenly take a big step and rushed towards Senju Makoto and Inoue again. Senju Makoto raised his eyebrows slightly when he saw this. If Senju Makoto's judgment was correct, this hollow was probably the soul of Inoue, the brother of Inoue, formed by the decay of obsession after death. Facing the attack launched by Inoue again, Inoue was instinctively afraid. She grabbed the corner of Senju Makoto's clothes with her little hand, hid behind Senju Makoto, and said nervously, "Teacher Kuroseki, what should I do?" However, the next moment, this time, under the clear gaze of Inoue, Senju Makoto, who did not look burly, raised his hand and grabbed it, as if he had grabbed a ball of cotton, and pressed the scary monster in front of him to the ground with his backhand. "Rem!" As Senju Makoto shouted, Inoue felt that Rem, the clerk who usually behaved indifferently and venomously in the flower shop, suddenly appeared beside Senju Makoto. "Master, please give me your orders," Synopsis said in a somewhat brisk tone. "Help me deal with this hollow," Senju Makoto said. "Master, do you mean, did you eat it?" Synopsis asked uncertainly. Senju Makoto: "Of course not, I mean to take good care of him so that he can be useful when I come back." Senju Makoto added unhappily. "It's okay if it's a little damaged, right?" Synopsis confirmed. "Whatever you want." As Senju Makoto's voice fell, in the shocked eyes of Inoue, Synopsis, who looked like a small arm and leg, directly removed Inoue's arm with his backhand, and dragged Inoue, who was like a human stick, into the flower shop with one hand. Inoue. It was not until Synopsis's back completely disappeared from her eyes that Inoue came back to her senses in a daze, and asked in shock and horror, "Teacher Kuroseki, what's going on?" Senju Makoto groaned, feeling the spiritual pressure fluctuations on Inoue, and spoke. "You can call these the truth of the world. P.S. I have a lot of things to do at home, but there will be a third update later, but it will be a bit late." Chapter 390. A monster that can destroy Karakura town. The truth of the world. As soon as this word came out, it almost instantly stirred up Inoue's brainstorm. In the eyes of Inoue, Makoto Senju's image instantly became mysterious and great. The savior hidden in the flower shop is usually a flower shop owner and flower arrangement teacher. In fact, he is silently protecting the whole world from monsters in the back. Not for fame, not for profit, not for power. Gentleness is not only facing customers and students, but also gentle protection of everyone. Thinking of this, the excited Ori seemed to have a few more flushes on her face, and said admiringly, "Awesome, awesome. Teacher Kurosaki, you're awesome." Makoto Senju nodded subconsciously, and after a little aftertaste, he inexplicably felt that there was something wrong with this compliment. Moreover, didn't he explain specifically what was going on? So what exactly is this compliment for? Senju Makoto had several questions in his mind, but he looked at the admiration in the eyes of the always confused Ori, especially her hands unconsciously closing and squeezing the holy text. The powerful scene suddenly made Senju Makoto forget what he wanted to say just now. As for the protection of Karakura town, it was better to leave it to Kurosaki Ichigo and Ishirai. Ori, in fact, there are some very powerful powers hidden in your body. Really? Kurosaki teacher. Yes, if you believe me, I will try to help you develop it now. On the other side of the football field, the spirit bow in Ishirai's hand was almost like a residual image, and the spirit arrows were like a fountain blooming in the center of the football field, heading towards the direction locked in all directions. Wherever the spirit arrows passed, the hollows that had just emerged from the black cavity were instantly hit, and they made a shrill scream and disappeared into the night sky. This scene also made Ichigo Kurosaki, whose battle with the hollows was still at the stage of close combat, show an expression of disbelief. Compared with the gorgeous and chic ultra-long-range killing of hollows one after another like a screen scrolling, Ichigo Kurosaki suddenly felt that his hard work in the past was a joke, and he was like a dog. Even Rukia Kachiki was shocked by the strength shown by Ryoshida. Even if the hollows that have appeared so far are ordinary hollows, they can continue to release spirit arrows in this way, and accurately lock one hollow after another with spiritual pressure from a long distance. Very strong. In Nagoti 13, at least it is above the level of a chief officer. This also made Rukia Kachiki's originally nervous expression relax a little. If Ryoshida can continue to kill hollows in this efficient way, then Karakura town will be protected, and her own affairs may not be discovered by the Seireitei. However, just as Rukia Kachiki silently prayed that everything would go well, a huge black cavity suddenly appeared between the densely packed small black cavities that kept breaking apart in the night sky. A being that was as big as a tall building and covered in black slowly walked out. Great Hollow Killian? Rukia Kachiki's face turned pale almost instantly. The great hollows that appeared in the real world would easily attract the attention of the Seireitei, and even the lowest level Great Hollow Killian was not something that ordinary death gods could resist. However, before Rukia Kachiki could think of a countermeasure in her mind, and consider whether to let Ichigo Kurosaki and Ryoshida join forces to fight side by side with the goal of destroying the Great Hollows, Ryoshida seemed to have expected the appearance of Killian. His expression did not change at all, but he spoke lightly. Is it finally here? After destroying so many miscellaneous hollows, I finally waited for it. Obviously, for Ryoshida, the goal from the beginning was the Great Hollow. There is no doubt that even if ordinary hollows are destroyed, they will not attract the attention of the Seireitei. Only the Great Hollows will make the Seireitei look at them a little, and it will also be enough to make Ichigo Kurosaki realize how big the gap is between him and the queency he despises. Great Hollows. This kind of existence that is enough to make ordinary Shinigami despair is the most suitable reference in Ishirai's eyes. The next moment, the spirit arrows that Ishirai had been releasing like after images in his hand stopped, and a spirit arrow with particularly bright luster condensed out while keeping the spirit bow at full string. For Ishirai, the spirits absorbed by this spirit arrow were almost the limit of his talent as a quincy. Watch out! Ichigo Kurosaki, as Ishirai's voice fell, the spirit arrow in his hand instantly turned into a bright meteor, and went straight to the distant Killian who had just emerged from the black cavity. Swoosh! And the Killian, whose size was comparable to that of a high-rise building, slowly began to dissipate under this arrow. Damn, killed it! Ichigo Kurosaki and Rukia Kachiki both stared with wide eyes, shocked at the slowly dissipating Killian. Vice Captain. To kill a Killian so easily, at least he must be at the level of Vice Captain. At this moment, in Rukia Kachiki's heart, her evaluation of Ishirai was once again refreshed. And Ichigo Kurosaki, who never thought that there was any irreconcilable contradiction between him and Ishirai, couldn't help but give Ishirai a thumbs up and said in admiration, "Ishirai, you are so strong, so amazing." However, before Ichigo Kurosaki finished speaking, the black cavity that was originally opened by the dissipated Killian did not close, but instead erupted with a terrifying spiritual pressure that was so heavy that it was unimaginable. Almost all the humans in Karakura town who did not have spiritual power fell into a coma almost instantly under the impact of such a terrifying spiritual pressure. Under the oppression of this spiritual pressure, Ichigo Kurosaki and Rukia Kachika felt the unprecedented heaviness from the spirit body, and it seemed that the air around them became more sticky than ever before. The level is definitely a hollow above Killian, Rukia Kachika said with wide eyes. Could it be a hollow of the level of Ichike's? Ichike's? Ichigo Kurosaki asked with difficulty, panting. Rukia Kachika gritted her teeth and spoke with a somewhat desperate tone. That is a monster that can easily destroy the entire Karakura town by itself. Damn, this is trouble. Chapter 391 Yamayan Terrible Ichike's. This name was like a nightmare to Rukia Kachika. According to the books in the Shinigami Academy of Spiritual Arts, Ichike's was a terrifying existence comparable to the captain-level Shinigami. In Rukia Kachika's memory, that gentle and hateful man died in the group of Ichike's hollows. Fear, anger, despair, the interweaving of many emotions made Rukia Kachika's body tremble faintly. Ichigo Kurosaki, who was beside Rukia Kachika, saw this. Ichigo Kurosaki, whose spirit body was extremely heavy due to the terrifying spiritual pressure, raised his foot and blocked Rukia Kachika. The not-so-generous and majestic back made Rukia Kachika startled. Ichigo? Rukia Kachika said subconsciously. Rukia, I don't understand the rest, and I don't know the conflict between the Shinigami and the Queensies, but you were afraid of that guy, and that guy will also destroy Karakura town, right? Ichigo Kurosaki suddenly stacked the giant zanpakutō in his hand into the grass, and his body became more and more straight, and he said loudly. In that case, then it is enough to know one thing, that is to chop that guy down. These passionate and firm words made Rukia Kachika startled. Rukia Kachika had seen countless beings stronger than Ichigo Kurosaki, but could there really be a person who was more stupid than this guy? He was obviously a fool who had a hard time even beating ordinary hollows, but he claimed to chop down the big hollow at the level of Ichike's. Could it be that he could not sense that the spiritual pressure emitted by the other party alone was enough to overwhelm him? And these words also made Ishida look sideways slightly. This kind of belief and courage, should I say stupidity or idiocy? Ishida said in a low voice, and then said, forget it. Anyway, letting this idiot understand the gap is just a side job. The most important thing is to clear the name of Uncle Kurosaki to the Seireitei. Thinking of this, Ishida's eyes suddenly became much sharper, and he stepped on the grass with both feet, using that flying lean kid to quickly move towards the exaggerated black cavity. Hey, you guy, wait for me. Seeing this, Kurosaki Ichigo also exerted his strength suddenly, chasing after Ishida, and turned back to give a thumbs up to Kachika Rukia and said, Rukia, don't come over, I will definitely get rid of that guy. Before the somewhat dazed Kachika Rukia called out to Kurosaki Ichigo, Kurosaki Ichigo's figure had disappeared in the football field. Damn. Are both of them idiots? Kachika Rukia couldn't help but grit her teeth and stomped her feet hard, saying, this situation is no longer within the scope of what you idiots can handle. Wait. Kachika Rukia suddenly remembered something, and her eyes suddenly lit up. In the entire Karakura town, if there is anyone who has the combat power comparable to that of a Yokkai's level hollow, then there is undoubtedly only one person, Kurosaki Makoto. With this thought, Kachika Rukia did not bother to chase Kurosaki Ichigo, but instead identified the location and went straight to the location of the flower shop in her memory. On the other side, as Ishida and Kurosaki Ichigo continued to approach the giant black cavity, the spiritual pressure inside the black cavity became clearer and clearer. On the other side of the black cavity, something is approaching. Ishida's expression became more and more fierce, and he looked at Kurosaki Ichigo who was following closely behind him and said, Hey, Kurosaki Ichigo, stay away for a while, I don't want to collect the bodies of the god of death. That guy, you are definitely not so easy to deal with, right? I'm here to help you. Kurosaki Ichigo replied. What qualifications do you have? Ishida's voice paused slightly, and he looked at Kurosaki Ichigo with a frown, but he was slightly surprised in his heart. The spiritual pressure has changed. Compared to the beginning, Ichigo Kurosaki's spiritual pressure has increased significantly without him noticing. The terrifying spiritual pressure emanating from the black cavity has never been reduced, but Ichigo Kurosaki has regained the ability to move freely, and his demeanor seems to no longer feel the oppression brought by the heavy spiritual pressure. Does this guy have some amazing potential or talent? Ishidori thought to this point and stopped trying to persuade Ichigo Kurosaki, tacitly approving of Ichigo Kurosaki's behavior. Hey, Rai, should we make a plan? Before Ichigo Kurosaki finished speaking, Ishidori suddenly stopped and interrupted. Here we go. As Ishidori finished speaking, a foot that looked almost human stepped outside the black cavity. Immediately afterwards, a person wearing a white robe that seemed to have a unique beauty appeared in front of Ishidori and Ichigo Kurosaki. His body shape was almost indistinguishable from that of a human. From a distance, he looked like a sturdy human being. Ishidori, Kurosaki, Ichigo. At this moment, Ishidori and Kurosaki Ichigo were both startled, looking at the burly man who appeared outside the black cavity in shock. If it weren't for the mask of the type of hollow on the jaw of this burly man, and the obvious hollow hole on the chest, judging from the appearance alone, it would almost be a living human. The existence that looked like a burly man almost ignored Kurosaki Ichigo and Ishidori, who were standing not far away. He exuded a terrifying and heavy spiritual pressure wantonly, and his eyes swept around and spoke. Well, is this the present world? The spirit particles in the air are thinner than expected, but I can smell a lot of nostalgic smells belonging to human souls. Young I, at this moment, a somewhat indifferent female voice sounded behind that burly man called Young I, and spoke. There is no need to devour human souls that are meaningless to us. Who knows, among these human souls, our kind may be born. As the voice fell, another figure with skin color similar to Young I, all healthy wheat-colored, walked out. But compared with the tough and rough appearance of Young I, this is a woman with dazzling golden long hair, a hot body, and green eyes like a pair of lakes that will not cause any ripples. Terrible, you are so annoying. Young I heard the words, and seemed to mutter a little dissatisfied, but did not change his movements, and chose to stand behind Hannibal faintly. Then, Hannibal's gaze turned and fell on Ishidori and Kurosaki Ichigo, and asked. Answer me a question, where is Kurosaki Makatao? Chapter 392 Broken Zanpakutō. Where is Kurosaki Makatao? As soon as this question came out, Ishidori and Kurosaki Ichigo's expressions became a little ugly, and the same idea came to their minds at the same time. These two guys are coming for Uncle Kurosaki. Ishidori sneered and said. Why do you think I will answer your question? Why? Hannibal said calmly. Sacrifice is a glorious spirit, but meaningless sacrifice is meaningless. You probably can't even sense my spiritual pressure, right? With the gap at this level, obedience is the best choice. As Hannibal said this, Ishidori's expression suddenly sank. Maybe Kurosaki Ichigo didn't understand what this meant, but Ishidori knew very well what it meant. This means that the level gap between the two sides has reached a certain unimaginable level. A case? No. Ishidori instantly denied this guess in his heart, and stared at Hannibal standing in front of Yama, who was emitting terrifying spiritual pressure, and then came up with a possibility. Fast old. Can you still keep a little calm? Great. Hannibal said lightly with his arms crossed. In that case, can you tell me the answer I need? However, before Ishidori could speak, Kurosaki Ichigo, who was standing behind Ishidori, couldn't help but said angrily. What are you guys kidding? Talking to yourself. How could I tell you that information? That's right. Ishidori followed with a sneer and said. Although I hate the god of death, I have to admit that what he said makes sense. Immediately, Young I, who was standing behind Hannibal, couldn't help but show his big white teeth and spoke. Hannibal, I've already told you that your theory is meaningless in the real world, not to mention in Huko Mundo. If you want to get any useful information, you should beat him half to death first. Before Young I could finish his words, Young I's burly figure suddenly appeared in front of Ichigo Kurosaki before he could react. His fist, which was as big as Ichigo Kurosaki's head, suddenly slammed down at Ichigo Kurosaki. However, Ichigo Kurosaki may not have reacted, but Ryashida reached out and grabbed Ichigo Kurosaki's collar, threw him backwards, and avoided the fist that hit the ground and caused a large-scale collapse. Boom. At the moment when a large amount of smoke filled the air, Ichigo Kurosaki was thrown out, and Ryashida landed on a telephone pole. As he pulled the spirit bow in his hand, spirit arrows gathered. Swoosh. Suddenly, a spirit arrow broke through the air and penetrated into the diffuse smoke. However, the next moment, the smoke was blown away by Young I in one breath, and the spirit arrow that landed on Young I's chest collapsed directly as if it hit a copper wall, leaving only an inconspicuous white mark. Oh? Not bad. If it was against ordinary Akays, this level of attack could really break through the defensor, but unfortunately, it was me who encountered it. Yamai casually patted the white mark with a cruel smile on his face, and his eyes turned back and forth between Ishidarai on the telephone pole and Kuroseki Ichigo, who was thrown into a wall. The next moment, under Ishidarai's somewhat surprised gaze, as a hollow with a crazy and belligerent personality, Yamai did not choose to attack Ishidarai first, but instead rushed towards Kuroseki Ichigo with his burly body. Bang! Facing this scene, the spiritual pressure on Kuroseki Ichigo was soaring at an incredible rate. He roared in anger while hearing a whisper in his ear. "Damn it, don't underestimate me. Get out of the way, idiot." Just as Ishidarai's urgent voice sounded, Yamai grinned and punched down at Kuroseki Ichigo from above. While Kuroseki Ichigo's spiritual pressure was rising wildly, he held the giant zanpakutō tightly in both hands and slashed at Yamai. Boom! The collision between the two instantly stirred up a lot of dust that swept around in a ring. However, Yamai's fist that collided with the giant zanpakutō was only delayed for a moment, but it was pressed down again. In an instant, the bones of Kuroseki Ichigo's spirit seemed to creak, and the whole person knelt on one knee uncontrollably, with blood oozing from his clenched teeth, and his hands holding the giant zanpakutō trembling with a visible amplitude, pressure. Unparalleled and unprecedented pressure. At this moment, Ichigo Kuroseki felt that his ears were buzzing under this terrifying pressure, and his whole body seemed to be crushed in the next moment. How could the gap be so big? Unwilling, angry, fighting spirit, under the accumulation of a lot of emotions, Ichigo Kuroseki felt that the faint whisper in his ear seemed to become clearer. From Yamai's perspective, the spiritual pressure on the Yant in front of him, who was kneeling on one knee and barely supporting himself, seemed to be rising wildly and unreasonably. In just a few breaths, it was almost beyond the level of an ordinary Killian. Well done, Ichigo Kuroseki. And how could Ishidarai, who had been trying to rescue Ichigo Kuroseki, let go of this opportunity won by Ichigo Kuroseki's support? Ishidarai's figure appeared behind Yamai, and the spirit arrow in the spirit bow was almost close to the hollow hole that pierced Yamai's chest. As a quincy, Ishidarai's understanding of hollows was far better than that of Ichigo Kuroseki. Although Ishidarai was puzzled as to why Yamai, as an Ichikas, would maintain a human form, and his body's defense was far beyond the records kept by the Ishida family. However, one thing would not change. That is, for the hollow hole was an obvious flaw. Attacking the inside of the hollow hole passage would bypass the hollow's defense and cause effective damage. This attack will be a funeral for your arrogance and despising the quincy, Ishidarai said lightly, and when his fingers that were fully drawn to the spirit bow were about to loosen, a crisp sound of breaking suddenly rang out. Ichigo Kuroseki's giant zanpakutō that was struggling to resist Yamai shattered with a sound, and Yamai's fist fell on Ichigo Kuroseki's shoulder. Crack! As the ear-piercing sound of rapture rang out, Yamai's whole body bent down to prevent the hollow hole from being attacked by the spirit arrow, and his palm like a palm leaf fan suddenly reached down and grabbed Ishidarai's ankle. Chapter 393 Rain Dragon. Muscle Dragon Form. What? This series of changes made Ishidarai's face change slightly. Different. This guy is completely different from the hollow he knew in the past. How could he have such a level of combat awareness? He seems reckless but is extremely cunning. This is a trap. It targets Ichigo Kuroseki, but it is actually a trap set for me who is more flexible. Just when this thought came to Ishidarai's mind, Yamai's 5 fingers that were holding Ishidarai's ankle suddenly exerted force and pulled it hard. The next moment, Ishidarai felt dizzy and was still held by Yamai by the ankle and brought up in front of him. Little bug, what a pity, I'm a hollow who has experienced fighting against the quincy. Your little bugs who only know how to keep distance and shoot non-stop are the most annoying. Then, Yamai raised his other fist and blasted it straight into Ishidarai's face. Bang! The sound of flesh hitting flesh rang out. The next moment, Yamai's eyes widened a little, and he looked at Ishidarai in disbelief as he raised his slender arm that looked like a bamboo pole to block his fist. Then, Ishidarai blocked Yamai's fist with his 5 fingers, forcibly pulling Yamai's fist apart. He looked directly at Yamai and spoke slowly. What made you have an illusion? Although I am not a pure-blooded quincy with a static blood suit, I am definitely not comparable to those thing-dog quincies like those Uncle Kuroseki said. As Ishidarai's voice fell, Ishidarai's body, which was obviously a human, suddenly swelled up, and his originally slender arms swelled up several times. The muscles that were intertwined and the lines that were clearly outlined, Ishidori's fitted shirt was almost instantly blown up, and the whole person seemed to have turned into a muscular man who was only a few sizes smaller than Yamai. Muscle dragon form. Boom. The next moment, Ishidori punched Yamai's chest hard. The explosion sound caused by the collision of muscles caused Yamai's body to step back uncontrollably. The 5 fingers holding Ishidori's ankles also subconsciously loosened, allowing Ishidori to regain his freedom and fall to the ground again. Then, Ishidori looked back at Kurosaki Ichigo behind him. One side of his body was hit by Yamai's punch. The huge force almost instantly crushed a lot of bones from Kurosaki Ichigo's shoulder down. This made Kurosaki Ichigo look like half of his body was covered in blood and flesh. He lay on the ground and kept breathing heavily but couldn't move. Ishidori frowned slightly. While knowing that Kurosaki Ichigo needed emergency treatment, he took the initiative to pounce on Yamai. Boom. Another punch was thrown out. Ishidori, who maintained the muscle dragon form, seemed to be pulled open like a big go. The rotating fist caused an amazing sonic boom and hit Yamai's face. And this was just like the beginning, relying on the mobility of the flying lean kick. Ishidori showed an amazing close combat level that a Quincy should not have. He stuck close to Yamai and his fists fell on Yamai like giant spirit arrows. Boom. Until this series of attacks that seemed to have completely stunned Yamai, Yamai's huge and burly body was directly blown away, brushed past Haribo's side, and crashed into a building. Ishidori paused for a while, raised a finger that was almost as big as half of his face, pushed his glasses, and then completely tore off the shirt cloth strips that were still hanging on his body. Haribo, whose expression did not change at all from beginning to end, still folded his hands across his chest and commented. It is hard to understand how a Quincy's body can have such physical strength and power. Want to know the answer? Wait until I send you to hell and then think about it slowly. Ishidori said lightly, and his figure turned into a violent after-image, rushing straight towards Haribo, and the whole person once again accumulated amazing power like a big go. However, just as Ishidori was about to get close to Haribo, he felt a flash in front of his eyes, and Haribo disappeared instantly. And, Ishidori only felt a pain in his wrist. When he turned his head, he saw Haribo, who was facing away from him, pinching Ishidori's wrist with his slender 5 fingers. Humans, if you don't have a clear judgment of your own combat power, the price is often death. Unfortunately, I have an important mission on my shoulders, otherwise I would allow you to show more brilliance from an appreciative perspective. As Haribo's faint voice reached Ishidori's ears, a burly shadow suddenly enveloped Ishidori completely. And, did you enjoy the fight just now? Yamai, who seemed to be unscathed on the surface, showed a cruel and angry expression on his face. His spiritual pressure increased a lot, almost visible to the naked eye, and his clenched fists seemed to want to completely smash Ishidori. The next moment, Yamai's fist went straight to Ishidori's head, as if he wanted to smash Ishidori's mind directly. Damn it. Ishidori's pupils shrank, and his muscles stretched and contracted, bursting out with huge brute force to try to get rid of Haribo's restraints. However, it was too late. Just as Ishidori watched Yamai's ferocious smile becoming more and more wanton, a spirit arrow that seemed to be able to pierce the sky suddenly flashed before Ishidori's eyes. And, it pierced Yamai's hands at the same time. Ah! Amid Yamai's angry cry of pain, Ishidori seized the fleeting opportunity, twisted his body suddenly, and forcibly broke free from Haribo's restraints, retreating towards the source of the spirit arrow. On the roof of the high-rise building at the edge of the battlefield, the night wind blew Senju Makoto's white hair wantonly, and his white windbreaker also rustled, and his hands still maintained the posture of pulling the spirit go. And, behind Senju Makoto, stood an Udaori, who had changed into Rem's flower shop clerk uniform. Uncle Kurosaki, Ishidori, who fell in front of Senju Makoto, was still maintaining the muscle dragon form, but his face showed shame and lowered his head. Ah, Senju Makoto sighed softly and said, Rick, how many times have I told you that as a Quincy who is a bowman in a sense, how can you indulge in close combat and brute force? Chapter 394. Double Heaven Return Shield. What kind of serious archer would indulge in the pleasure of close combat? Senju Makoto reminded Ishidori almost from the beginning. However, as Senju Makoto continued to improve and strengthen Ishidori's body according to the physical reaction of Ishidori's arm training, Ishidori slowly developed some strange habits. Facing Senju Makoto's scolding, Ishidori lowered his head in shame, without the fierceness and violence he had just fought with Yamai, and listened without daring to say a word. Then, Senju Makoto's eyes turned and looked at Kurosaki Ichigo lying in the ruins on the other side, and his brows could not help but frown. With Senju Makoto's professional eyes as a doctor, he almost judged the severity of Kurosaki Ichigo's injuries at a glance. If Kurosaki Ichigo was an ordinary Shinigami, Senju Makoto would have been ready to go to the Kurosaki family for a feast. Alright, Ichigo has taught you the new power that you have been guided to. Makoto Senju said to Inoue behind him. Inoue's expression was a little tense, and she said nervously. Yes, I will definitely try my best to heal Ichigo. I believe you can do it. Hearing the encouragement and recognition from Makoto Senju, Inoue's tense expression seemed to relax a little, and then she quickly rushed towards Ichigo Kurosaki, and her mind unconsciously emerged with all the things that happened not long ago. There are some very powerful powers hidden in your body, believe me, I will try to help you develop it now. How can I not try to believe what Teacher Kurosaki said? What's more, I have been barely alive until now because of being taken care of by everyone, and I have always been dragging everyone down. I also want to do something. Without the slightest hesitation, Inoue chose to give all her trust to Mr. Kurosaki, and Mr. Kurosaki took herself to the room of the flower shop, and then let her mind recall the things she loved most in the past, holding on to the most persistent belief. Then, Mr. Kurosaki's palm lit up with an incredible light, and slowly inserted it in. The chest was pierced. No, it seemed that even the depths of the soul had reached, inexplicably, at that moment. Inoue seemed to feel that she no longer had any secrets from Mr. Kurosaki, and everything about her was known to Mr. Kurosaki at this moment. However, Inoue did not resist this feeling, but felt relieved. If it was the gentle Mr. Kurosaki, it didn't matter. Since the death of her brother Inoue now, she finally had another person who could be completely trusted, as if under an inexplicable guidance. Inoue subconsciously recalled the past that she cherished most in her heart, and every bit of life with her brother Inoue now. In the past, I let my brother protect me all the time. Now, what I want to protect the people I cherish. I want to have the power to save everything no matter what. When Inoue came to her senses after being lost in memories, she had already arrived beside Ichigo Kurosaki. And Ichigo Kurosaki's vitality is also extremely tenacious. Even though his spirit body has collapsed to this extent, his tenacious willpower also allows him to maintain a relatively clear consciousness. Ichigo Kurosaki couldn't help but be slightly surprised by the appearance of Inoue, and the outfit of Inoue that belonged to a flower shop clerk also made Ichigo Kurosaki a little confused. Why are you here? It's dangerous here, Ichigo-san. Inoue said with a rare look of determination on her face. I'm here to treat you. As the voice fell, Inoue pressed her fingers on the light blue hairpin in her hair and chanted. Time I refuse. Two beams of light flew out from the hairpin of Inoue and flew towards Kurosaki Ichigo in front of him, forming an orange-yellow light film that wrapped up Kurosaki Ichigo. In an instant, Kurosaki Ichigo felt that the spirit that seemed to be getting worse and worse seemed to be recovering at a certain constant speed. At this time, another petite figure appeared beside Kurosaki Ichigo. It was Rukia Kachika, who arrived at the battlefield a step slower than Makoto Senju. Seeing the trend of the horrible injuries on Kurosaki Ichigo's body slowly recovering, Rukia Kachika couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief and said with joy. That's great, Ichigo. Fortunately I invited Makoto Kurosaki here in time, and I didn't expect that Inoue-san also has the ability to heal. Being interrupted by Rukia Kachika, Ichigo Kurosaki paused and subconsciously said to Rukia Kachika. Thank you, Rukia. I didn't expect to have to trouble you in the end. Upon hearing this, Kachika Rukia began to lecture Ichigo Kurosaki in a somewhat annoyed manner, with her hands on her waist. You are too impulsive, Ichigo. A hollow of the level of a Cheng-ge cannot be defeated by courage alone. Yes, I understand. What kind of perfunctory attitude is this? Ichigo. Seeing this, Inoue, who was trying hard to treat Ichigo Kurosaki, couldn't help but flash a bit of disappointment in her bright and resolute eyes. As expected, Ichigo-san treats Kachika-san in a special way. Inoue thought silently, and inexplicably felt relieved in her heart, as if some knot in her heart had been untied. After Kachika Rukia lectured Ichigo Kurosaki, her eyes accidentally glanced at the special appearance of Haribel and Yami, and her pupils couldn't help but shrink. The whole person tensed up and said, Inoue-san, can you heal while moving? It's too dangerous to stay here. Yes, yes, in a day or I'm answered subconsciously. Immediately, without waiting for Ichigo Kurosaki to speak, Rukia Kachika directly carried Ichigo Kurosaki, who was lying on the ground on her back, holding the giant zanpakutō that was broken into only a small section in one hand, and walked away from Haribel and Yami. Inoue tried her best to maintain the Soutenchi shield in the moving state, while continuing to heal Ichigo Kurosaki, and followed Ichigo's direction. As for the small movements of Ichigo Kurosaki, Rukia Kachika and Inoue, Haribel and Yami did not pay attention to the intentions of those ants with weak spiritual pressure, and their eyes were always on Senju Cheng. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 395. Hidden in the background. Among them, Yami's eyes were almost filled with naked anger, and the two wrists hanging slightly on both sides of the body were still dripping blood slowly. As an Aransei revolved through the Aranseirization of the Hodyoku, it has gained power far beyond the original, and some of its own abilities have been greatly enhanced. As a forcibly catalyzed Aransei, it also has some inevitable costs. Among them, one of the prices Yami paid was the loss of the most common high-speed regeneration ability for the Achuka's level Hollow. Therefore, the two wrists were pierced at the same time, which was no less than the biggest provocation for the violent and irritable Yami. While reducing Yami's combat power by half, it also completely angered Yami. "Who are you, bastard? I will tear you apart bit by bit." However, compared with Yami's rage, Haribel, who had always remained calm before, had a little more solemn look in his eyes and said, "Shut up, Yami." Yami's chest rose and fell rapidly, and the spiritual pressure on his body fluctuated more and more, but he chose to suppress it temporarily. Then, Haribel glanced at Senju Cheng, who seemed to be standing in the distance with outstanding grace, and spoke from a distance. "Are you Kurosaki Cheng?" "Yes." Senju Cheng stepped forward and landed in front of Haribel with the most standard failing kick. During the whole process, Senju Cheng's eyes were always on Haribel's familiar and nostalgic appearance, but a lot of his attention was along some monitoring spirit channels to reach the jingling court. In fact, the first time Yami and Haribel appeared in Karakura town, Senju Cheng noticed their existence. At the same time, he also realized that there must be the shadow of Asian Sosok, otherwise the mere virtual bait would never attract the existence of Yami and Haribel's level. It's like, can you hook a mermaid by using earthworms as bait for fishing? It's impossible for a mermaid with a big catfish version of a fish on the upper body and a human on the lower body. It's just that Senju Cheng has always been a little unsure of Asian Sosok's purpose. With the current level of Kurosaki Ichigo's combat power, no matter how explosive he is, he can't beat Haribel and Yami. What if the target is me? It was not until he appeared here that Senju Cheng completely understood that Asian Sosok's target was me, but trying to kill or test me, the unstable factor with an unusual relationship with Kurosaki Ichigo, was only superficial. More importantly, it would further expose his strength in front of the 13th Division of the Court Gotti. In the past, Senju Cheng defeated Kurosaki Mayuri, who was not good at frontal combat, head-on, but this actually didn't mean anything. Under the premise that Kurosaki Mayuri did not prepare in advance and obtain sufficient intelligence, Kurosaki Mayuri, who is now simply obsessed with research, is almost the weakest in frontal combat among all the captains. And if he has the sensitive identity of a queency and the amazing strength to defeat Haribel, it will be enough to cause the fear of most captains of the 13th Division of the Court Gotti and the entire Central 46th Chamber. Now, with the help of the ability of spirit control, Senju Cheng can clearly see his every move with Haribel, which has appeared synchronously in the captain's meeting room. As expected of you, Aizen-kun, Senju Cheng landed on the ground steadily, and the image of Asian Sosok appeared in his mind, thinking silently. It seems to be a simple and crude layout, but it is actually a means of taking advantage of the situation completely hidden behind the scenes, quietly setting up a death trap for Kurosaki Cheng, the queency. If you lose to Haribel and Yami, you'll die. If you win against Haribel and Yami, you'll cause the fear of the 13th Court Guard Division, and you may secretly issue orders through the Central 46th room. Who knows, in the second half, you may face the siege of several captain-level Shinigami and die, if it weren't for the fact that this queency was me. And I know you very well. I'm afraid that until you are besieged to death by the 13th Court Guard Division, you probably won't realize that you're behind everything. Senju Cheng asked Hannibal and Yami in front of him with some emotion in his heart. Who are you? Hannibal answered calmly. No. 3 of the 10 Espartas, Hannibal, and no. 10, Yami Realco. What is your purpose here? Senju Cheng asked. To kill you, Hannibal replied. Why? Senju Cheng asked. Given the relationship between Hollows and Quincy, don't you think this question is ridiculous? Hannibal asked back. Alas, Senju Cheng sighed and said. Pure hatred. If that's all, then disputes and hatred will never end. You have wisdom, shouldn't you try to create a peaceful future? These words made Hannibal's pupils shrink obscurely. These words almost instantly gave Hannibal a strong sense of familiarity. But before Hannibal could answer, Yami, who was standing beside him, grinned and said. No end? How is that possible? I'll tear you apart, chew you up, and swallow you into my stomach, and then I'll kill all the remaining Quincies. Then, won't it be a complete end? So, there's no room for a peaceful turnaround. What a pity. Senju Cheng said helplessly, and a seemingly plain spirit bow slowly appeared in his hand. Obviously, I don't plan to fight this unnecessary battle anymore. Seeing this, Hannibal also suppressed the strong sense of familiarity in his heart, and grasped the bone sword tightly to prepare for the battle. When the Quincy in front of him first appeared, he easily pierced through Yami's wrist with one blow. Hannibal knew that Yami was no match for this Quincy. Therefore, Hannibal's eyes, like the surface of a lake, became more solemn and full of fighting spirit, and a heavy gold and spiritual pressure slowly emanated from his body. Seeing this, Senju Cheng's mouth curled up slightly. After not seeing each other for decades, it was a good experience to meet Hannibal again in such a rough way. Rick, Uncle Kurosaki, I'm here. I'll leave the big guy named Yami to you, is that okay? Senju Cheng said calmly, as if assigning a simple task. No problem. Ishirai, who maintained his muscle dragon form, pushed his glasses, and his eyes were once again filled with fighting spirit. Chapter 396. Conquer him, the Royal Mermaid Queen. Boom. The next moment, Ishirai collided with Yami, who was already furious, before Senju Cheng. Although Senju Cheng had just warned Ishirai that as an archer he should not indulge in close combat, Ishirai almost instinctively chose to fight with Yami in close combat. For a moment, Ishirai and Yami were like two muscular monsters, with muscles as twisted as dragons and as hard as rocks, constantly colliding with each other, making a dull sound. If it weren't for Yami's amazing spiritual pressure that was completely unrestrained, causing a large number of people to faint the moment he appeared in Karakura town, I'm afraid that these loud noises would wake up all the people in Karakura town from their sleep. Boom 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 boom. Swoosh. The sound of breaking through the air and the sound of sonic boom were mixed together. As the bone sword slashed past, Senju Cheng disappeared from the spot, dodging Hannibal's attack. Huh. Didn't you take it hard like the other Quincy? Hannibal said in surprise. Of course not, Senju Cheng, who had pulled hundreds of meters away in the blink of an eye, shot a spirit arrow and answered. Rai is a child who has gone a little off the track. In fact, I'm not the type who is good at close combat. My fighting style is more about constantly keeping a distance, so it may be relatively boring. The moment Senju Cheng's voice fell, the bone sword in Hannibal's hand collided with the spirit arrow, which made Hannibal's face change. Boom. A huge explosion suddenly occurred. Obviously, Hannibal only hit a spirit arrow, but it seemed that he had taken the same level of hollow flash hard. The whole person took a few steps back and stepped heavily on the ground. So strong. Hannibal made a further judgment in his heart. This is definitely a Vastode level hollow then. Hannibal's last step landed heavily on the ground. Sound. Hannibal's figure flashed, and he quickly closed the distance with Senju Cheng again, and the bone sword filled with spiritual power in his hand pointed at Senju Cheng and stabbed it from a distance. Blue sword cannon. In an instant, a shockwave comparable to the flash of Vastode level hollows rolled towards Senju Cheng. Senju Cheng's fighting instinct subconsciously dodged, and glanced at the large buildings behind him. With the power of the blue sword cannon, even if Hannibal did not deliberately aim at Karakura town, the terrifying combat power of the Arensei Vastode Hollow was enough to destroy a large area of buildings with just the aftermath. It may cause the death of a large number of humans. With this thought, Senju Cheng stepped back gracefully, and while pulling away a little distance, another spirit arrow condensed in a spirit bow. A serious arrow the next moment, along with the flash of blue light from the spirit bow in Senju Makoto's hand. The spirit arrow was like a storm breaking through the waves, breaking through the blue sword cannon with an unstoppable momentum and rolling back towards Haribel. Boom! Just as the spirit arrow was about to hit Haribel's eyes condensed and whispered a sentence. "Conquer him, the queen of the sharks." In an instant, the extremely terrifying spiritual pressure completely erupted, directly dispersing the spirit arrow that was about to fall on Haribel, and the almost materialized spiritual pressure even shattered the clouds in the night sky. This astonishing spiritual pressure not only made many powerful people hidden in Karakura town frown, but also made many captains in the captain meeting in the Seireitei change their expressions slightly. This level of spiritual pressure is almost completely superior to most captains. Although, spiritual pressure is not everything, especially because of the characteristic of hollows devouring their own kind, the spiritual pressure of hollows is often stronger than that of Shinigami of the same level. But the combat power and spiritual pressure displayed by Haribel have already explained many things. Bang! Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni knocked his cane heavily and shouted. The situation in Karakura town, as a spiritual place, has become so bad that we can no longer sit idly by. We must stop it, purify it, and end this farce. Then, Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni swept his eyes over the faces of the captains in front of him, and then said, "Even if the captain of the 6th Division, Byakuya Kachika, and the captain of the 11th Division, Kinpachi Zaraki, are allowed to go to Karakura town without the limited spiritual seal, they should be ready to fight at any time." After a pause, Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni considered it and said, "Also, captain of the 8th Division, Shunsui Ikuku, and captain of the 10th Division, Chihiro Hitsugaya, are waiting at the crossing gate immediately, ready to go to the realm of the world for support at any time and to deal with special situations." As soon as the second half of the sentence came out, many smart captains immediately understood the meaning. It was far from necessary to use 4 captains at the same time just to deal with the seemingly special hollows, Haribel and Yami. This undoubtedly included certain beings in the category of enemies that needed to be dealt with and prepared. Wait! At this time, captain of the 12th Division, Mayuri Kurasuchi, stood up and spoke in a somewhat sinister tone. Those 2 hollows that maintained their human form seem to have similar characteristics to the recorded Arensei-like hollows. I apply to go to Karakura town to collect further data and intelligence at close range. Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni pondered for a moment and replied. Approved. Unohana Retsu's brows were slightly knitted unconsciously for all this, but he had no chance to object or raise objections from a suitable standpoint, and instead continued to look at the screen of Karakura town that was synchronized from the Technology Development Bureau. After Haribel performed the return to blade release and showed his true posture and strength, not only did his spiritual pressure increase, but Haribel's special abilities also increased significantly. Senju Makoto seemed to choose a wider sky to avoid the attack in order to pull flexibly. One by one, the spiritual arrows and the water released by Haribel collided with each other in the night sky. Senju Makoto's consciousness was synchronized with everything that happened in the captain's meeting room, and a glimmer of light appeared in Senju Makoto's eyes. Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni undoubtedly had made some preparations, and made a decision without asking the opinions of many captains. Moreover, the candidates sent to Karakura town were captains who had no intersection with Kurosaki Makoto's identity. Aizen-kun, you really make it difficult for me. Chapter 397 Goodbye. At this moment, for Makoto Senju, it is no less than being in a dilemma. In addition to facing the threat from Haribel, he may also stand on the opposite side of the Seireitei at any time. Threat. The Seireitei may tolerate weak queensies, but they are absolutely extremely vigilant against queensies that may pose a threat to the Seireitei. Nip the threat in the bud. If Makoto Senju's in the position of Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni, he would definitely not sit idly by and ignore the existence of a threat like Aizen Sosok. However, if you want to break the situation, Makoto Senju's eyes slightly curved, and the spirit bow in his hand released another spirit arrow, and his figure once again turned into a shadow under the flying lean kick. Bang! Washijaku. Haribel, who had entered the state of returning to the blade, was almost like a humanoid shark, manipulating a large amount of water to forcibly smash the spirit arrows. One after another, the Washijaku water flow, like a cannonball, chased the afterimage of Senju Makoto and swept away. For a moment, the battle between Senju Makoto and Haribel seemed to have entered a white-hot and long-lasting war of attrition. It was at this time In Karakura Town, 3 gates opened at the same time, led by the captain of the 6th Division, Byakuya Kachika, the captain of the 11th Division, Kinpachi Zaraki, and the captain of the 12th Division, Mayuri Kurosachi, each led their subordinates to the real world. At the moment when these captain-level Shinigami set foot in the real world, the chaotic spiritual pressure in Karakura Town was included in their perception. In addition to the amazing spiritual pressure of Haribal and Young Ai, the entire Karakura Town was densely covered with a large number of ordinary hollows under the effect of hollow bait. Moreover, since the death gods Rukia Kachika and Ichigo Kurosaki, who were nominally responsible for the purification of Karakura Town, temporarily lost their combat capabilities, Karakura Town entered a defenseless stage. Under the seduce of instinct, a large number of ordinary hollows began to look for humans with high spiritual power within the scope of Karakura Town to devour. With a frosty face and looking like a gentleman, Byakuya Kachika did not hesitate at all and ordered the officers who followed him. Go, with the first goal of destroying the hollows, act. Yes. Immediately, the officers of the 6th Division led their direct subordinates to quickly start to act, purifying and destroying the ordinary hollows that appeared in large numbers in Karakura Town. Compared with decades ago, Kinpachi Zaraki, who had an eye patch on his face, a hairstyle that was almost like a hedgehog head, and small bells tied to the ends of his hair, shook his neck and spoke with a little excitement. Little guys, it's time to find your own prey and fight. The next moment, a pink lily Kusaka Yarai appeared from behind Kinpachi Zaraki, raised her little fist and responded first. Hey! Little Kinpachi, go on, go on. Immediately, the burly men following Kinpachi Zaraki scattered, holding their zanpakutō and howling as they rushed towards the ordinary hollows. Then, Kinpachi Zaraki's eyes turned back and forth between Haribal in the sky and Young Ai below, and then locked onto Haribal, whose spiritual pressure was much stronger, and took a step to prepare for the fight. Captain Zaraki, please wait. At this moment, Byakuya Kachika raised his hand to block Kinpachi Zaraki, and said in a cold tone, now is not the time to fight. In order to prevent the 2 hollows from escaping back to Hukomundo, it is better to wait until the Kidmushu have completely set up the barrier. After a pause, Byakuya Kachika looked at Mayuri Kurosachi on the other side and spoke. And Captain Mayuri Kurosachi also needs time to collect and analyze intelligence to prevent a long battle from causing irreversible damage to the world. Kinpachi Zaraki panted heavily for a few times, snorted in dissatisfaction, and said, how long do we have to wait? Very soon. Byakuya Kachika answered coldly and rationally. Upon hearing this, Kinpachi Zaraki's face was almost visibly unhappy. He turned around and kicked a wall on the side of the road, sat down on the collapsed wall, and said, just wait for 10 minutes. If it doesn't work, I will chop down the Kidmushu together. Byakuya Kachika did not answer Kinpachi Zaraki again. Instead, his eyes looked in the direction to the west. After leaving a word, he disappeared with Abirai in an instant. Excuse me for a moment. At the same time, on the side of the road, which was a certain distance away from the most intense battlefield, when a large number of Shinigami spiritual pressure appeared, Rukia Kachika's face changed almost visibly. In this case, it is almost impossible to hide the fact that Kachika Rukia has been trying to conceal secretly passing the power of the god of death to humans from the Seireitei. In an instant, Kachika Rukia's heart almost instantly sank. Based on the attitude of the Central 46 chambers in the past towards similar cases, the lightest punishment is to completely deprive the power of the god of death and exile, and the most serious cases even directly sentenced to capital punishment. However, what Kachika Rukia is most worried about is not herself. After all, she is a member of the Kachika family, and the Central 46 chambers may give her a lighter sentence because of her status as one of the 4 nobles. However, in the past, the lightest punishment for humans who stole the power of the god of death was to directly cut off the spiritual chain connecting the soul to the body, and then take them to the soul society for disposal. In a sense, for humans, what is the difference between this and death? No. Ichigo cannot be implicated. Kachika Rukia looked at Ichigo Kurosaki, who was about to fully recover under the treatment of Ori Imanoe, and her pale face revealed a bit of realization. Although if Rukia Kachika forcibly took back her own power of the god of death from Ichigo Kurosaki in time, the punishment issued by the Central 46th chamber would often be much lighter. However, Rukia Kachika recalled the bits and pieces between her and Ichigo Kurosaki, and finally a sentence echoed faintly in her ears. In this case, then it is enough to know one thing, that is to chop that guy off. TSK, what an idiot. If I implicate an idiot, it would be even more inappropriate. Rukia Kachika quietly wiped the tears from her eyes and spoke. Ichigo, my colleagues have come to support me, and I need to meet up with them now. After your injuries are healed, return to your body to recuperate, and leave the rest to me. After that, Rukia Kachika smiled at Ichigo Kurosaki lying on the ground, waved her hand, and soon disappeared at the corner of the street. Goodbye, Ichigo. Chapter 398. Something important was taken away at the same time, in the flower shop, in Senju Cheng's room. Nian, who was using the shadow doll, knelt on the tatami without any expression on his face, and skillfully and calmly arranged the clothes that Senju Cheng had just dried, and then placed them according to Senju Cheng's usage habits, so that Senju Cheng could use them conveniently. In addition, folding quilts, arranging books, and sorting out various odds and ends, as Nian quietly left Senju Cheng's room, the whole room had returned to the well-organized appearance in Nian's memory. For Nian, this has been her daily routine in recent years, taking turns with Synopsis to deal with various trivial matters in the flower shop and Senju Cheng's life. Nian stood quietly at the door of the room for a few breaths without moving. It seemed that he was thinking about something. Then, Nian went downstairs to prepare Senju Cheng's favorite tea and snacks, and carefully placed them on the table in the room. At this moment, the tea and snacks in front of him seemed to be clearly reflected in Nian's eyes, causing waves in Nian's eyes. After a long time, Nian seemed to take a deep breath, sniffing the faint scent in the air, turned around and slowly closed the door and went downstairs. At the corner of the stairs, Synopsis, who maintained the appearance of Remdoll, looked at Nian calmly and said, "Hey, Yin, I'm the one serving the master tonight, what do you mean by this?" Nian walked in front of Synopsis, bowed slightly under Synopsis' somewhat surprised eyes, and then said, "Manager, I will ask Rem to take care of me in the future." Synopsis frowned slightly and replied, "You don't need to remind me of this kind of thing. Please." Nian said calmly, then directly separated from the doll and returned to the spirit state, turned around and walked out of the flower shop. Seeing this, Synopsis asked, "Wait, where are you going?" When Nian opened the door of the flower shop, he paused for a moment and answered, "Please tell the manager that my part-time job at the flower shop is over." Then, under the gaze of Synopsis, Nian disappeared in the flower shop. After leaving the flower shop, Nian did not choose a direction to move forward, but walked aimlessly in this familiar yet unfamiliar Karakura town. Nian knew very well, after he left the artificial body given to him by the manager, Lord Kurosaki Mairi would instantly determine his location. Therefore, it didn't matter where he walked, because the destination would definitely be the Technology Development Bureau of Seireitei. The next moment, Kurosaki Mairi's familiar figure appeared in front of Nian with a weird smile and a scrutinizing look as if he was looking at an experimental subject. "Nian, long time no see." Nian bowed to Kurosaki Mairi without any expression on his face and answered, "I'm sorry, Lord Kurosaki Mairi, the mission failed. I failed to place the drug on Kurosaki Makoto." "That kind of thing doesn't matter." Kurosaki Mairi opened his hands, walked faster and faster towards Nirvana Onmu, and then suddenly slapped Nirvana Onmu in the face. "Pa!" The harsh sound echoed in the quiet street, and Nirvana Onmu was slapped to the ground in an instant. However, even so, Kurosaki Mairi still didn't feel relieved at all. His expression became more and more distorted and he kicked Nirvana Onmu, who was lying on the ground, angrily. The back of the head, ribs, face, almost every vulnerable part of Nirvana Onmu was heavily kicked by Kurosaki Mairi. Bang bang bang. In the midst of the harsh sounds, Nirvana Onmu did not resist, and even had no intention of dodging. The moment Nirvana Onmu was created, Nirvana Onmu's mind was set by Kurosaki Mairi, and everything was for Lord Kurosaki Mairi. Therefore, as the creation of Lord Kurosaki Mairi, it is Lord Kurosaki Mairi's right to be treated so cruelly by Lord Kurosaki Mairi. Huff, huff. After a while, Kurosaki Mairi seemed to be exhausted and panting, and then he stopped and pointed at Nirvana Onmu lying on the ground and shouted, "Do you know that you are an important experimental material? Do you know your own value? How dare you ignore my orders and stay in the world?" Nirvana Onmu, who had been ravaged and scarred, still answered without any expression, "I'm sorry, Lord Kurosaki Mairi, I haven't received any new orders in recent years, so I followed the first order you issued in the past and made Kurosaki Makoto take the corresponding medicine at all costs." "You?" Kurosaki Mairi's expression became more and more angry, and he questioned angrily, Then why did you waste a full 6 minutes and 23 seconds before exposing your position after sensing that I appeared in Karakura town? What did you do during that time? Nirvana Onmu lowered his head slightly, and there was a little more struggling in his eyes, and he didn't answer Kurosaki Mayuri for a long time. Mayuri Kurosaki, who was staring at Nirvana Otonashi, instinctively became more and more angry. Suddenly, he thought of something and his expression revealed ecstasy, defiance. Although Nirvana Otonashi's hidden defiance made Mayuri Kurosaki extremely unhappy, what was revealed in Nirvana Otonashi's eyes was actually a struggle. Otonashi, it seems that it is necessary to conduct a new study by comparison, Mayuri Kurosaki said in a sinister and ecstatic tone. This time, I took the opportunity to come to the real world to retrieve Nirvana Otonashi. I didn't expect that I could get some unexpected gains. On the other side of Karakura town, Rukia Kachika, who tried her best to avoid the hollows along the way and distanced herself from Ichigo Kurosaki, suddenly paused. Rukia, you know that you are in such a hurry and your manners are not what the Kachika family should be like. With that cold and arrogant voice, Byakuya Kachika and Rinji Aburai slowly walked towards Rukia Kachika from the end of the dim street. Rukia Kachika's expression first tensed, then she tried to squeeze out a relaxed and happy expression and said, Brother, and Rinji. Why are you here? However, as Byakuya Kachika and Rinji Aburai approached Rukia Kachika and saw her current state, their faces almost unanimously became extremely ugly. Such weak and unstable spiritual pressure, it can no longer be simply described as an injury. There is only one possibility, that is, the power of the god of death has been taken away, so she can only live in the artificial body temporarily. In an instant, Byakuya Kachika, who was originally only worried about the safety of his sister stationed in Karakura town, and took advantage of the little time to look for her, his mood was extremely bad. It was as if his cherished sister had been secretly taken away with something important. Chapter 399 The bigger the storm, the more expensive the fish. Among them, Aburai Rinji, who was completely naive, asked without hesitation. Hey, Rukia, how did you get into this state? No, it's nothing, there was just a little accident. Kachika Rukia tried hard to perfunctorily pass it over. Accident. Aburai Rinji seemed to have realized something, his expression became completely gloomy and angry, and he said with murderous intent. Who took away your power of the god of death? I'm going to kill that guy right now. No. Kachika Rukia blurted out to stop Aburai Rinji. This also made Aburai Rinji's pupils shrink, and he felt that the goddess he had secretly loved for many years had been taken away on a business trip, and he even defended her to the death even though he knew that this would lead to serious consequences. As for Kachika Byakuya's mood, it was even worse. At this point, Kachika Byakuya didn't understand that his lovely onion-headed sister might have been taken by a bastard who came out of nowhere in the real world. Then, holding on to a glimmer of hope, Aburai Rinji began to frantically ask about the whereabouts of Kurosaki Ichigo, while Kachika Rukia insisted that nothing had happened and that the power of the god of death was lost accidentally. The situation seemed to be in a stalemate. Enough. Kachika Byakuya shouted with a slightly inappropriate tone, and then spoke in an unusually cold tone. The god of death, Kachika Rukia, privately handed over the power of the god of death to others, which seriously violated the ban of the Seireitei. She will be arrested immediately and brought back to the Seireitei to await the judgment of the Central 46th Chamber. Captain. Aburai Rinji looked at Kachika Byakuya in disbelief, and felt incredible about this order. Kachika Byakuya looked up at the barrier that was about to be completed by the Kidmushu onto the night sky, and did not explain anything. Instead, he raised his eyes and glanced at Aburai Rinji coldly, and asked. Vice Captain Aburai, you also want to disobey orders? As soon as these words came out, Aburai Rinji's whole body trembled, and a look of struggle flashed across his face. Then he walked towards Kachika Rukia and reminded her. Rukia, since this is the captain's decision, don't try to resist. Kachika Rukia did not speak. He had already prepared for this moment in his heart, or in a sense, this was already the best result. The people who met him were his elder brother and Aburai Rinji, and he could still say something to stop them from tracking down Ichigo Kurosaki's whereabouts. That's good, but I'll have to say goodbye forever, Ichigo. Seeing Aburai Rinji approaching, Kachika Rukia thought silently, preparing for her own outcome. Although for Kachika Rukia, at the beginning, she gave the power of the god of death to Ichigo Kurosaki just to protect the Kurosaki family as humans and fulfill her duties as a god of death, but a ban is a ban. She was a little regretful that she could not restore the power of the god of death before the Seireitei noticed, at this moment. Rukia, is this the situation you said you could solve by yourself? Ichigo Kurosaki's excited voice sounded behind Rukia Kachika, causing Rukia Kachika's eyes, which had been slightly drooping, to suddenly widen, and she turned her head to look at Ichigo Kurosaki in disbelief. Why are you here, you idiot? Get out of here. Ichigo Kurosaki, who had completely recovered under the treatment of Orihinoi, strode out and said without hesitation. Of course I am here, we're companions, aren't we? Who can watch their companions being taken away by some inexplicable guy, and then wait for the verdict? You guy. These words undoubtedly moved Rukia Kachika, who had already made some preparations, to tears. Byakuya Kachika and Rinji Aburai's eyes also fell on Ichigo Kurosaki. Death suit. Soon, Rinji Aburai reacted and said angrily. No. You are not a member of the 13th Gotti Squad, but a bastard who stole Rukia's power of the god of death, right? As Aburai Rinji spoke, he drew his zanpakutō from his waist without hesitation, revealing his hostility to the point of being undisguised. The so-called hatred of being bull-headed, and Kurosaki Ichigo sensed the huge spiritual pressure of Aburai Rinji, which was at the level of a vice-captain. Although his expression was condensed, he did not intend to retreat. He slowly pulled out the broken giant zanpakutō from behind and muttered. It's okay. Although the spiritual pressure is very strong, it is much weaker than that big guy's hollow. In my current state, there may be a chance to take back Rukia. These words were almost as good as sprinkling salt, soy sauce and mustard on the wound that had just been cut in Aburai Rinji's heart. You are just a human in this world, a bastard who has seized Rukia's power of the god of death. You dare to look at me, the vice-captain, with such audacity, and want to take back Rukia? In extreme anger, Aburai Rinji even became incoherent. That broken giant zanpakutō, that chaotic fighting posture, is simply a joke, a shame, kill you. But before Aburai Rinji could make a move, Kachika Byakuya appeared beside Kurosaki Ichigo in a flash, and said coldly and arrogantly. Sorry, there is no time to waste on ignorant ants like you. Kachika Byakuya suddenly felt a pain in his chest, and Kurosaki Ichigo, who fell to the ground as his consciousness quickly fell into darkness, could not hear clearly what he said. However, he could vaguely see Kachika Rukia kneeling on the ground in despair, as if she was screaming something. Damn, the gap is too big. And at the moment when Kurosaki Ichigo's spiritual pressure rapidly declined, Senju Cheng, who was playing some game of advance and retreat with Hannibal, turned his eyes. Senju Cheng clearly sensed Kurosaki Ichigo's condition. However, Senju Cheng's attention was immediately focused on the barrier that the Kidmushu was about to complete. It's almost time to expose the strength that should be exposed to this extent, Senju Cheng thought, and realized that the time was almost right. In a sense, the trap set by Aizen Sosok for the identity of Kurosaki Cheng was almost unsolvable. At the very least, it would prevent Senju Cheng from obstructing Aizen Sosok's subsequent plans for the Hojoku under the fear of the Seireitei. Unfortunately, this trap was not unsolvable for Senju Cheng, who knew Aizen Sosok's background very well. Under normal circumstances, the Queency with amazing combat power is a threat that the Seireitei cannot tolerate. However, there is an exception. Just as the saying goes, the bigger the storm, the more expensive the fish. To the Seireitei, the powerful Queency is no less than a poisonous fish with thorns. Chapter 400 Familiarize Under the night sky. Boom. Under the night sky, a waterfall was raging, and the turbulent water flow almost turned into a canopy covering the night sky, rushing towards Senju Cheng madly. Terrible, very strong. Under the continuous pulling of Senju Cheng, after eating countless attacks fired by Senju Cheng, Hannibal was undoubtedly on the verge of being enraged, and the spiritual pressure that erupted faintly made the entire Karakura town shake. Vast odd. This is the Great Hollow standing at the top of Hukomundo. In addition to strengthening Hannibal's own combat power, the Arensei guided by the Hojoku has more importantly allowed Hannibal, who never devoured his own kind in the past, to get rid of his weak state. Therefore, when meeting Hannibal again on the opposite side, only Senju Cheng is most aware of Hannibal's exaggerated changes and specific strength. Similar to captains with relatively ordinary combat power such as Komamura Sajin and Tosunkane, Hannibal may be able to crush two at the same time. However, this level of wind and waves is obviously not enough. The idea flashed through Senju Cheng's mind, but the whole person was so natural that there was no place to hide, and was hit by a wave of water released by Hilibel, knocking Senju Cheng out of the high-speed flying lean kick state. And how could Hilibel miss this fleeting opportunity to win? The whole person followed the water flow and almost instantly got close to Senju Cheng's side, and the bone sword swept across with the burst of golden virtual flash. Bang! Senju Cheng raised his spirit bow and laid a spirit shield, blocking the attack dangerously, and the whole person seemed to be completely unbalanced and flew backwards to one side. However, Hilibel naturally would not give Senju Cheng another chance to distance himself, and chased him with sound turn. Although the bone sword did not have time to swing again, the open 5 fingers bit towards Senju Cheng's fragile neck like shark teeth. The next moment, 5 fingers tightly grasped Senju Cheng's throat, which made Hilibel's eyes condense, and he subconsciously said, "Quincy, I finally caught you." However, with the two sides now close to each other, a response suddenly floated into Hilibel's ears. "No, Hilibel, I caught you." Hilibel heard the words, and instinctively exerted force with 5 fingers, wanting to directly crush the fragile neck of the Quincy. However, it didn't move at all. Hilibel's pupils shrank subconsciously, and when he realized that something was wrong, he wanted to distance himself, but suddenly felt that his chest was gently pressed by Senju Cheng's palm. This action undoubtedly made Hilibel's originally cold expression flash with anger. Perhaps, when he was a pure hollow, Hilibel didn't care about the ethics that were more concerned about humans and Shinigami. However, after becoming an errant sailor and truly possessing an appearance that was almost incomparable to that of Shinigami and humans, Hilibel gradually understood some things. This move was nothing short of an insult and a provocation. Instantly, Hilibel's spiritual pressure almost materialized, and when he was about to counterattack the Quincy in front of him, he suddenly felt that he couldn't move. He couldn't move in the true sense. The air around his body, no, it was the spirit particles belonging to Karakura Town that bound Hilibel invisibly. Just as Hilibel was deeply shocked, the hand that was pressed on his chest opened, and then pressed slightly again. However, whether it was the many eyes of Karakura Town or the picture transmitted to the Seireitei, the picture they saw was just Hilibel pinching Senju Cheng's neck and falling rapidly from a high altitude. As for the obscure little action, no one could see it clearly at the angle selected in advance by Senju Cheng. Then, Senju Cheng's palm pressed gently on Hilibel's chest almost repeatedly. Hilibel's expression kept changing in a short period of time, from shock, to anger, to grief and anger, and then to hatred, until, when Hilibel stared at the Quincy named Kurosaki Cheng in front of him with hatred and anger, he suddenly found that Senju Cheng's eyes were so gentle and clear. Under the night sky, Senju Cheng and Hilibel were still falling to the ground. At this moment, Hilibel seemed to have returned to the unchanging night sky in Hutomundo decades ago. The night sky suddenly had a little more light, and it was also that first time he saw that kind of gentle gaze. The next moment, Senju Cheng's palm once again climbed to the familiar position and pressed gently, allowing Hilibel to come back to his senses from his memories. This time, Hilibel's eyes were no longer filled with grief and anger, but flashed with a bit of doubt. This location is the wound that Ashura-sama treated for me. Coincidence? Hilibel's thoughts almost turned into a mess, and he was slightly confused. Once again, that palm pressed lightly. No, it's definitely not a simple coincidence. This guy is conveying some kind of information. And besides Sunsung and the others, only Ashura-sama knows the unique meaning of this wound location for him. Could it be? Bang! The next moment, as Senju and Hilibel fell to the ground, Senju Cheng, who was paying attention to the changes in Hilibel's eyes throughout the process, raised his mouth slightly. Hilibel has already vaguely guessed something. This is enough for the subsequent plan. The reason why he didn't tell it directly through language is that Senju Cheng is not sure whether Aizen Sosok will keep any backup plan in Hilibel's body to monitor or something like that. Senju Cheng was no longer the innocent and naive young man. To be cautious and safe, he naturally chose to pass the information to Hilibel in this way. Just when Hilibel wanted to say something, the hand that was secretly pressing on Hilibel's chest suddenly exerted force and interrupted Hilibel's words. But to outsiders, it seemed that Senju Cheng seized a fleeting opportunity, broke free from Hilibel's 5 fingers pinching his neck, and quickly distanced himself from Hilibel. Retreating to the ruins of a house, Senju Cheng spoke as if he had survived a disaster. It's really dangerous, Hilibel, danger? Only Haribal understood that in the series of changes just now, it was he who was really counted and almost in danger. However, Haribal also reacted quickly. The queen he called Kurosaki Makoto in front of him was acting and pretending, and he was pretending after conveying the message to him. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.